to scare you.
Oh,
Okay?
and you did. Thank you.
I hate it when that happens to me. I've jumped out of my skin before.
The first one to arrive, huh?
Yep. I like getting one of the comfy chairs.
Yeah.
I'll just start the streaming.
Okay.
And then Celia responded. She said she got a number and she's gonna do it herself.
Okay.
Okay. And then my question is, if I open the PGI ID, remember you showed me there's a guest number.
Yeah, I
You
don't know her
don't
number. I don't know her number.
Right, but I saw that you, when you did it, you did not
It was
change
already,
that
yeah,
number.
it was already set.
And you already linked to it.
Yeah.
And it already showed the host is connected.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's already there.
you don't have to do that, right?
Not on
Well,
hers.
you open this section only if you want to
Hey,
monitor
Alice,
who's
how
gonna
are
call,
you?
right?
That's it.
But if you don't care,
They
then
don't care, you don't need it. You don't
there's
need
so
it.
many uses for presentation.
Yeah.
I know, it's
Okay.
okay. Actually, I'm calling
And
you
I
from
think,
the Air District.
PowerPoint has
I'm
changed
at
something,
the
right?
socioeconomy.
Change something. Before, if I check that by presenter view, it will
So
go to
that's
full
what
screen,
I'm
yeah.
doing
you go to full screen. Right now, it just at view.
So,
Really?
Yeah, it just, I don't know.
That's strange.
It's
working.
it's good actually.
Yeah,
you know,
I can
there's,
bring this up.
and,
What if you minimize this one?
It looks like,
Doesn't have to be
for
handled.
Oh.
everything
Oh,
except
that's
for some of
weird,
the
yeah.
trucks, they're expecting.
It is, it even has a different, yeah.
Yeah, if you move this to the preview,
Yeah.
from there, right
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
it's actually there, but it's not showing.
Some of the trucks will pick
But you
up
have to have a
some of those
presenter
costs.
view now?
That is-
Yeah, I got no choice, yeah.
So-
But do this, let's close it, open it again. Presenter view is, I mean, it's okay for me, yes.
Yeah.
I can see this is current view, this is next one, but, you know.
I've never seen it.
It's for the
I mean, I
commercial.
get it.
So that's.
This right now, then it's okay.
Statewide, you're talking about
Yeah,
sixty
It's
two
gonna be
billion.
okay.
And there's certain
Yeah,
markets
you know, that send
that
computers
are
thing,
only
Yeah.
keep showing
for
up.
South Coast, like all the advanced
It
technology.
never showed before.
Yeah.
Well, I think after you call it,
Uh-huh.
then it disappears, yeah. So-
So
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
be
do that
just
first.
like this. Of course, only available.
First one, like, as far as the,
So,
on the screen.
but like the.
Oh.
Full screen.
the,
No, no, you're right.
light
Oh, full screen?
vehicles,
I can,
they're planning on
No, no,
cutting
no.
those costs.
Start this
because
lecture.
It's really less of a.
I can do it.
No, no, no,
factor
stop,
in
stop.
the greenhouse gas.
Yeah, this is okay.
No, I just want that to show up real quick because then
Yes.
when I go back to this meeting and I'll leave it up on YouTube,
Mhm.
I'm gonna use this as a capture. In front
Yeah,
of the,
fine.
the
Just
little
kidding.
thumbnail.
Oh, okay.
That way, you know, I try to make it nice. That way I can have that at the very beginning of the meeting. and
I bet
people
you
know that's the
dollars.
meeting.
But that's a title of the day,
yeah. And see, that's what I would do.
I was
If
gonna talk to you.
you started the webcast already, did you check it? You
I-
looked at it?
I'm looking for.
Oh,
I
okay,
can find
yeah,
it.
right, that's library.
Library?
But I
Scroll
suspect we
down.
have it, I suspect that they're gonna be big enough
Webcast.
that we're probably gonna want to
Go.
put on like a flash
Ah,
drive.
Go to the
or
right hand
something.
side.
to send.
You get as a mobile version.
And we can also send.
Mobile version. Oh, right, webcast, right.
So I'm gonna call him and find out.
I have to disable the Wi-Fi, right?
I suspect it's not.
No, the Wi-Fi's
And we have two servers, so we should send all of them. So, but I.
The live one's not on, it's like this one.
Is it? Yeah,
You know, one thing is,
So right now, it should show this
a
screen,
lot has changed
even though it's saying bad.
since then. They maybe want to
sure.
have a look at
We'll
this.
double check.
Using the new ONA methods and stuff, because if they're asking for concentrations, then they would just put a heart to, which is the health risk monitor that has that on it. And I'm trying to think, I asked them, but obviously,
Sheet,
back when we were doing that was even back in around 2007. And I think we did put in things that were associated with like the truck program and things like that, cleaning up those kind of things. Obviously, I think back then, the Baywide actually showed a much slower implementation than it actually did. But by 2025, hopefully it'll be the same. Actually, the thing that would concern me
what do you use Safari?
is, I'm gonna double check with
What is
is
it called?
that
This one?
back 2007, had, there was the Model T 10 trucks. It basically, I
This?
found this out now. It's hard just to use it.
million, okay, so I'll put it here. And then,
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like 5 seconds ago.
It's 5 seconds already.
It's gone. Oh, that.
Yeah. Because usually we use this.
We're gonna go later this year. To insert.
Should I go and sit over here?
Let me check the outfit to see that.
Alright.
So we can't turn off the camera and the display?
Yeah, apparently I cannot.
It's kind of weird. But that's
So when the meeting starts, it's press start. And if you want the conference room to do this.
Okay. We can switch to the laptop already.
If you want to leave the laptop.
Oh, you're
Right, because we have to start.
Oh, okay. So
That's
this
how
is
you do it.
No problem.
Let me, thank you so much.
Sure.
Oh, and ask if I can get rid of that.
Alright, okay.
That's right now.
No, it's okay, we're still Pretend that you are from the industry.
Thanks. I'll ask some hard questions.
Okay. Steve and Jim, are you on the line already? Hello,
Billy the Opera.
who's this?
Billy?
Billy from Remy.
Yeah, Billy.
Hi, Billy.
Hey, how you doing? Is it
Pretty
me?
good, how are you? Yeah, this is Elan, and a room of about, I would say, 25, 30 people.
Yeah, you're all here.
Right. I also want to check if Emily is here. Emily, Steve, and James. Right. Steve, Jean, are you online? And Emily and Mallory?
It should be there.
Cecilia, check with them.
Cecilia,
She's in.
can you call us?
Emily and Melanie and Steve.
So we're going to wait for about 2 more minutes to make sure that our STMPR advisors, they're all like calling in.
Hello.
Hi, Steve. Is Jin there too?
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. So we haven't started our meeting while waiting for ARB staff to call in as well.
This is Mallory Albright from ARB.
Hi, Mallory. How are you?
Hi, man.
Good. We also have William Lund, our Econ Fellow, and Emily will be here shortly.
Okay, great. So I think we have.
Carol Bonnet.
Hi, Carol.
Bonnet from ETA.
Oh, Carol. So can we have everyone here?
Yes, I think so.
We got Billy and
So welcome everyone to our STMPR meeting socioeconomic session. This is our meeting number 8. And my name is Elan Shan. I'm program supervisor with socioeconomic analysis at the South Coast AQMP. And so if you have your phone with you, please place your cell phone on silent or vibrate mode. And if you need to use the bathrooms, so there are 2 bathrooms right outside. So if you exit this front doors, turn right, you will find the bathrooms, or you can turn left and then go down the hallway, and then you will find bathrooms also across the auditorium entrance. And if an evacuation is called, please exit this building through the glass door right at the back of this room. And if a shelter in place is necessary, such as in the event of an earthquake, please drop, cover your head, and hold on to your chair. That's what we have to say.
we have to go through that.
And for those people who are on the phone, I would like
Just
to
go under the table.
Use this table.
let you know that we now have a new feature to our STMPR meeting. So the meeting is being webcasted. So if you go to our website, www.aqmp.gov, and if you search the word webcast, then you should be able to find our meeting on the list. And so before we go into the agenda items, I would like to go around the table and have everybody introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Tony Oliver, Air Quality Specialist in Socioeconomic Analysis with the district.
Good afternoon. My name is Shah Debirian. I'm also program supervisor with the Socio-Econ group.
I'm Priscilla Hamilton. I'm an air quality specialist with the Socio-Econ group.
Jillian Wong, and I'm the manager of the Socio-Econ group.
So she's our new Joe Casmasi. For you.
Big improvement.
Big shoes to fill.
Certainly better looking.
I'm Bill Wong. I'm not with the Socio Group. I'm with General Counsel's office.
Rob Farber Consulting.
Henry Hoga, I'm the Assistant Deputy Executive Officer in Mobile Source Division here at the district.
I'm Philip Klein, Deputy Executive Officer, Planning and Rules.
Mary Jane Lasso, County San
Bernard, I'm a resident of LA County.
Michael Aredas, Air Quality Specialist in the modeling section at AQMP.
Scott Epstein, Air Quality Specialist, Air Quality Modeling at AQMP.
Scott Weaver, ERM.
Dr. Ronald Johnston, Executive Vice President, Union Roofing Contractors Association.
Wayne Peterson, Highland Burton.
Mike Kraus, planning manager, recent promotion at the district, overseeing the AQMP.
Noel Moiko with Southern California Gas Company.
Bill Lamar, Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance.
Kevin Oriana, AQMP Planning Rules.
Eric Hasselstein, AQMP Planning Rules.
Hi, Bar, it can be Panero.
And my AQMP Planning Rules.
David Miller, Program Supervisor.
Jerry Quinn.
Yeah.
Ditto.
John Henry.
Do you want, still
Wayne Boszczyk. Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts.
Peter Herzog with NAF, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association.
James Brightman with the construction industry.
Larry Ryder, L&M Consulting.
Oh my God.
Kelly Domingo, Planning Rules.
And Julia Lester with Granville Environment.
And so for folks on the phone, if you have to talk among yourselves, please put your phone on mute. And so I would like to also have the folks on the phone to introduce themselves as well. So Billy, can we start with you?
Yes, here at REMI, I'm here with, this is Billy Leon, Vice President of REMI, and I'm also here with Marley Buckman, Senior Analyst over here at REMI too.
Stephen Jing.
Steve Levy, Center for Continuing Study of the California Economy, and I at least can't hear the people who are far away from wherever the microphone is. I hear you fine.
Hi everyone, this is Chip Wong at Associates. Yes.
And Mallory and other ARP staff.
Yeah, so we are still waiting on Emily Whitberger. We've got Mallory Albright in the room.
I'm Paulo Blinker. And William Leon.
And Carol.
Carol Bonacamp, USC with the 9.
Is there anybody else on the phone? All right, great. And so prior to this meeting, we have received 4 written comments, 3 from the public, and 1 from our STMPR advisor, Dr. Frank Wen with SCAG. And so he cannot be here today, but he submitted some comments to us prior to this meeting. And so the first comment was submitted by Mr. Bill Lamar. So he had a comment on the minutes that we shared with the public, and it's on page 2. We want to apologize to Rob that we misspelled your name. So on the first bullet point, it should be Rob Faber, consultant, instead of wrong. And we will make the corrections in the revised version and then post it to the website.
It's no problem, I go by a lot of names.
Okay.
Many of them unprintable.
What's your preference?
No preference.
And then, so on agenda number 2, on the costs, we received comments from Dr. Frank Wen. So he commented that the SC AQMP staff should provide readers with description of the control measures and also key parameters of the costs, description of incentive programs and sources of funding, as well as make consistent dollar measurement and expression. And on agenda item number 3 on the preliminary public health benefits of draft 2016 AQMP, we received 1 comment letter from Dr. James Enstrom. So in his comment letter, he stated that he and other doctoral level scientists would like to challenge the validity of our preliminary health impacts, mortality, and also our selective use of JARET 2005, JARET 2009, and JARET 2013. And he provided a list of the links to the relevant documents that he recommended the staff to read. And another comment letter from Dr. Stanley Young. It's also on agenda item number 3. So he said in his own analysis, he found no association of air quality and acute mortality in the South Coast air basin among people who are 65 years old and older. And also he stated that his reading of the literature on the value of a statistical life is that VSL, so that's value of statistical life, depends on age. So for people younger than 18 or so, he stated that VSL is essentially 0, and it's the same for people older than 65. So we will be providing a written response formally in our draft final socioeconomic report. And so why don't we move to, so regarding the minutes, is there any other comments? Okay, so let's move to.
I guess one thing Elaine did. So there were a number of questions that were raised last time.
Right.
They were addressed here at the moment. Are they going to be addressed? And there were some follow-on items to address based on those questions. So we're going to cover those today.
So hopefully those so all the responses that were provided during the meeting, they were in the minutes. So hopefully today's presentations will address those concerns as well. And if not, you are more than welcome to raise your questions again.
So can you just give us what is the overarching objectives of the meeting today? What do we hope to leave with today?
So the overarching objective today is that we have calculated the preliminary costs and also public health benefits associated with the draft 2016 AQMP. And we would like to share those numbers with the public and go over generally how we came up with those cost estimates and also public health benefits. And we are looking forward to any comments or inputs from the public and also from the STMPR advisors. Yeah, and then regarding agenda number 4, we are honored to have our guest speaker, Mary Jane Ohaso from County of San Bernardino. So she will be talking about the general economic situations in the Inland Empire and also about the business climate in our region. And then I will, so following her presentation, I will also talk about some economic research that has studied the impact of environmental regulations on employment. So let's move to agenda number 2 then.
Okay. All right, as before I start, I just want to go over the latest development of the 2016 AQMP. As most of you know, our draft 2016 AQMP has been out almost for a month. And now that the draft is out, I guess all the attention is now on the cost, benefit, and socioeconomic impact report. Over the course of last 2 weeks, we held 6 regional public hearings where we presented the scope and outline of our socioeconomic assessment in those 6 regional hearings. The purpose of the scoping actually is to provide an outline of our socioeconomic assessment and seek input from public and stakeholders regarding the key issues, assumptions, and methodology. As you may recall, this was one of the APP recommendations to provide public information early on in the process. So basically, we promised the public to have our socioeconomic assessment out by end of August. So as you may see, we are busy right now to put in the document together. And here is our first presentation on cost and benefit. So this is just a main slide showing the attainment strategy of 80 and 75 ppm for ozone for milestone years of 2023 and 2031. And for 12 microgram per cubic meter, we are looking at 2021 to 2025, and for 35 microgram, looking for 2031 attainment. So overall, control strategies include both stationary source and mobile sources. Mobile sources are district portion versus the ARB portion, together, and include command and control versus command and control and also incentive programs.
Excuse me, Doctor. Can I ask a question real quick? The first slide, that you had up there indicating the AQMP and the
75.
75.
Yeah, 80 and 70.
Right. What percentage-wise, what type of reduction are we talking about from where the standard is right now? I mean, how much of a reduction do we need with respect to getting to the 80 by 2023 and the 75 by 2031?
So if I can answer that question, if you look at the draft AQMP and recent presentations that we made in committee, 43% reduction in NOx for 2023 and 55% reduction in NOx by 2031.
Thank you.
So next slide shows actually what we quantified in this plan. We only quantified those control measures that they have emission reduction ready to be incorporated into the SIP. So for those measures that they don't have emission reduction or not yet quantify emission reduction, we exclude those. We exclude control measures that are contingency measures, as well as those measures that they don't have quantified emission reduction at this point. We are going to present those costs separately as well. I mean, if there is any potential cost, we are going to mention in those into that category. We also not going to include the control measures that they have co-benefit from other programs, such as the greenhouse gas reduction, which state and local agencies are involved, as well as other programs that require building energy efficiency, which is one of our control measures, ECC-02, which recognizes SB 350 on our RPS or renewable standard portfolio. So we are going to exclude those as well. Now, the next slide has the overall cost. It's kind of a summary cost of the AQMP that we have broken down by stationary sources, AQMD, mobile sources, car mobile sources, and total. So, consistent with the ARV, we tried to present those values at the present board, so that stands for the millions of dollars, and we discounted those. The dollars are in 2015 constant dollars, but the present board was done at 2017 to be consistent. Again, because we are going to present the average annual cost from 2017 to 2031.
So just so make sure I understand this, I thought this stood for Mega Millions.
No, just
anyway.
It's the millions of dollars.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's
so that first number is 6,630,000.
No, 6 billion.
6 billion. Oh,
yes.
It is Mega Millions. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's why you have, it's like,
okay.
yeah.
All right,
6,639 million, which is 6 billion.
Okay. All right, got it.
Elaine, are you taking questions?
Questions? Yeah.
Are you taking questions from outside of the?
So if you have questions directly related to the slides, then you are more than welcome to ask the question. Otherwise, we would like to ask you to hold your questions until the end of the presentation.
Okay, yeah. So I do have a question related to the slide. Is that good? Okay. So Henry mentioned, and the other gentleman asked a previous question that's related to this. When the first control measures came out, you outlined or highlighted the fair share, 30%, 60% at the time. Now, Henry, you referenced 43 and 53. For the costs that was used here, a couple of questions. So, are we using the 43 and 55% reductions with the cost, or the fair share that at the time the district was obligated to pursue?
These are based on the emission reductions that are in Chapter 4 and in each individual control measure.
Yes.
So the fair share portion is the sum of the emissions. For example, mobile sources, they're broken down by state and federal sources. But the sum total of those emissions to the extent that there are emission reductions associated with them, are reflected in this total $6 billion.
Okay, and then the second question I have is you also have South Coast Mobile Source, CAR Mobile Source. These numbers are the district's numbers?
Yeah, actually, I was about to elaborate. I mean,
Okay.
like, this is, so basically, as you said, when you look at the, yeah. Another question?
I'm sorry, I'm behind you, Chef.
Oh, sorry.
I guess I'm suffering from the same shock that Rob is over there with the $6 billion. Present value of compliance costs in 2017. That's an enormous number, but I think it might even be larger than that, not knowing what the various cost elements go into, this $6 billion.
Yeah,
We have always been at odds, most of the time, staff, during the rulemaking process, on how much it costs for what are the compliance costs for different rules, and I think the same concerns.
Yeah, the next few slides goes over more details. If you just hang in there for a few minutes.
So if you have specific questions regarding the cost, like we would like to ask you to wait until the end of the presentation, unless you have more general questions regarding the first two slides. And then also we want to emphasize that we are currently developing an appendix to spell out all the assumptions and key parameters that go into this calculation. And we will be providing the appendix together with our release of our preliminary draft socioeconomic analysis. I know it's hard to know what exactly went into these numbers that you have right now, but then we want to share with you those numbers so you have an idea that, well, this is the general cost, and then it comes from different sources. And then, yeah, so if you have any questions regarding
This is kind of
assumptions
just
or
a
key
big
parameters.
picture. The first slide shows you the big picture, and then we move on to the other slide that shows more details.
So then, Elaine, are you saying, is this out for public comment right now?
So the presentations are out for public
No, I mean
to review, but then the draft is not ready yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this other piece of the picture will come out at the same time then, so we'll have the same amount of time to review everything.
Right, so this will be an appendix to our chapter 2 of the socioeconomic analysis. So the chapter 2 of the socioeconomic analysis will talk about the incremental costs, both in terms of compliance and also incentive programs.
But that will come out at the same time for the public to review and comment.
Correct.
Yes.
So Bill, maybe I can help. So this is hot off the presses, what we've been developing, very, very preliminary. We wanted to share with everyone where things stand. And we don't expect you to give us comments on this, on the details, because we haven't given you the details yet. Right. We'll give you more details as we go forward, but as we're developing this, we wanted to share it with everybody. We're not asking that the comment period begins today on things that you don't have yet, but over the next several weeks, we will be developing that preliminary draft report and appendices that will have all the details in it, and then it'll be much easier for people to comment. But this is just sharing, ahead of time, in a transparent manner, what the numbers are starting to look like as they're being developed. And so that's why we don't have all the documentation done yet. We've just been running the models. So the other point is, if there's disagreements or you have comments on the underlying assumptions on the costs of certain control measures, this is a draft, and the socioeconomic report will be a draft. So if you don't agree with that, just like in a rulemaking, you may have some comments. Tell us, and we'll see what adjustments we can make as we go forward. But we fully understand that no one's going to be able to have detailed comments based on the presentation today. We're just sharing numerical results without necessarily having all the documentation in place yet.
And we also want to share with you. We also want to share with you the general methodology that we're using to come up with either the costs and also benefits. So if you have any comments on that regard, then we're happy to listen to them.
I had a question on the final column here on the right, annual amortized.
I was trying to explain that.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
If you just give me a couple of minutes, I go over this, then probably we answer potential questions here. So as you see, we have broken down the total cost, which is like a present worth value, to the incentive portion as well as the compliance cost. This is consistent with the ARB. When they presented the cost of SIP, they include the incentives as part of their compliance cost. So part of the reasoning is that they are going to express the cost as a societal cost, because those incentives, they could have been spent, those funds, they could have been spent somewhere else. So they're looking at the opportunity cost of those funds. So we try to make it separate so you can see better the distinction here. And also the last column that I was referring to, we are presenting the cost on an average annual. So instead of amortize, if you can think about annualizing the cost, it's the same thing. So we annualize capital cost plus O&M cost. We present those on an annual basis. This is also consistent with our past cost benefit analysis for the past AQMP as well as with the ARB. So when you look at the overall picture here, you see most of the costs are coming from car mobile sources. Take a look at the column before the last column. You have $28 billion on mobile sources. Most of the NOx emissions are coming, emission reductions are from car, which is 97 tons per day, versus the district portion, which is like 10 tons per day. So you see the difference between 1.4 billion and 28 billion right there. And also looking at the big picture, the total cost of the SIP that was published, I guess, a few months ago is around like 60 billions at present worth. So ours is around, when you look at the car portion, is around like 28. So considering the the ratios and population and things, that falls in the kind of a reasonable range. And when you look at the total average annual cost, this is like 2.5 billion. This is annual cost, which is in the range of previous AQMPs. In the past AQMPs, we have costs around 1 billion, 1.2 billion, $2 billion. So it's not really far from there. So if you don't have any question on this slide, this is just a very general summarized slide.
No, I have one question.
Sure, yeah.
So this, of course, goes out, this is amortized over something like 14 years, 15 years, depending on when you start, when you end. But
yeah,
but that's not important.
So we amortize it over the equipment life.
Right, but my question is, how do you know in advance how to amortize this? Because these things don't kick in on day one, right? I mean, they're going to be phased in over time, these various regulations. We really don't know, do we, exactly how this is going to play out?
We do have the assumptions.
We have assumptions. Yes. For example, the vision model that ARB is currently using has all those assumptions. They have a turnover rate of vehicles. They have emission profile of all those trucks, and so we have those dates. In terms of our stationary sources, we know when is the implementation date. Some of the major kicks in 2026, for example, the reclaim one. Some kicks in earlier. So we have those dates.
Well, I guess, and I've raised this question before. Technology is moving so fast.
Yeah.
For example, in terms of mobile. And I don't know if Carb's here today. I could see.
Carb is online.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we have no idea in 2031 what cars are going to look like, what they're going to run on. They're going to run on fuel cells, hydrogen cells, that type of thing, right? I mean, things are really changing.
We don't have the
fast.
idea, but the vision model has some ideas. That's what we have.
Who knows?
So Rob, in terms of CARB's impact model, which has the assumption on turnover, rates into the future, it's based on survey and sales of new cars.
Yeah.
So in that respect, for light duty cars and light duty trucks, there's a pretty good projection about turnover rates year to year, and that's projected out as consumers buy new cars and so forth. When it comes to something like a transit bus, it's a fairly clear understanding of when transit buses are turned over, generally about 12 years. or so, and there are requirements by FTA, Federal Transit Administration, that buses be turned over at a certain rate. So we do have, ARB does have that information to put in. For heavy-duty trucks, ARB did a fairly detailed survey of the truck population and the types of trucks that are purchased as new by larger fleets and used trucks that are purchased by smaller operators. So they have a pretty good idea of the turnover rate and the rate of used truck sales, and they use that to project into the future. Your question deals with new technology and how lasting new technologies are.
Yeah,
so the assumption,
and that may change everything.
It may, but based on so far for light-duty vehicles, we've seen zero-emission vehicles come online last few years. Hybrid vehicles been around for almost 15 years now, so we're seeing we have enough information to make a fairly good projection. And keep in mind that the AQMP is a snapshot in time. Every 3 to 4 years, we're going to be updating it.
Right.
So we're going to get new information. So these are projections, snapshot in time, and as we move forward in time, we'll have better information.
Yeah, I'm just sensing that we're going to have some revolutionary things happen in the next few years in terms of what fuels we use for mobile sources.
So we utilize the best information that we have right now. And Scott?
Yeah, so Henry noted this AQMP is a snapshot in time. I just want to confirm these are the incremental costs attached to the measures of this AQMP.
Correct.
Are not inclusive of any of the preceding costs or the costs attached with measures from, say, the 12 AQMP.
No, not at all. Only 2016.
This is
So
not-
we're looking at incremental cost only. Yeah. Sean, would you like to proceed?
Okay,
Next
no more questions here? Okay, so let's move to the little more details here on the stationary source NOx measures. So among NOx measures, the one that quantified emission reduction are this list, starting with the ECC. So ECC, as I mentioned, this is like energy, climate change control measures. Basically, this control measure asks for emission reduction for from older appliances and for residential usage. So basically, here we are looking at the newer equipment, newer efficient appliances like water heaters, pool heaters, dryers, and here we're talking about a lot of equipment. That's why you see the cost are almost 1.5 billion present world, and also there are incentives associated with that measure. The remaining measures are combustion, basic combustion measures, CMB, stands for combustion. So CMB01 is basically traditional combustion equipment that has boilers, IC engines, ovens. So we are asking for zero and near zero technology in those categories. So fuel cell is among one of those controls as well. CMB02 is commercial multi-unit residential space water heaters. Basically, here also asking for new technology, zero emission technology for the water heater. I mean, basically boilers. Low NOx burner basically is a technology used for this control measure. Again, we have a lot of equipment. We have up to from maybe 50,000 to 100,000 units of equipment in that category. For CMB03, it's basically non-refinery flares which affect landfills, oil and gas productions, wastewater facilities, and asking for maybe new flares and other technologies. The CMB04, which is for restaurant burners, here we are looking at 250,000 equipment that need to use low NOx burners. So that's the reason, again, cost is rather high. And then there are some incentive allocated to this measure. The last one is CMB05, which is emission reduction from reclaim. Here we are looking at 5 tons reduction, starting from 2026 to 2031. And the cost estimate was based on the methodology used for 2015 NOx reclaim. So we basically increased the cost due to the kind of a diminishing return and due to the fact that it's going to be more costly to reduce those additional 5 tons in the reclaim program.
So, question, the column with the incentives for CMB-03 and CMB-05, does that imply that there's no identified incentives at this time, or does that imply that there's no incentives that are going to be available?
Yes, the plan does not propose using incentives for those metrics.
Those are negotiated. Okay, it's the flares.
It doesn't plan to, but
You know, in the future, if incentives become available in those categories, it's cost effective, yeah, but the plan doesn't anticipate reclaim facilities getting incentives or a requirement to change out the flares would require incentives.
And I also want to add that when we do the cost estimates, we try to use the worst case scenarios. So for example, for the incentive programs that we proposed, some of them, we know there are other existing incentive programs like rebates that can be used concurrently to lower the compliance cost. So when we're sure that those other existing programs can be utilized, we will take them into account. But then in cases like some of the CMB-02 or CMB-04 incentives, we know there are other incentive programs out there, some of them offered by SoCalGas, for example, but we're not really sure like what's the share of the population that can be that can also utilize SoCalGas rebate program. So then we will assume that there's no other rebate program that can be utilized to lower the cost. So the cost might be higher than what will actually occur.
So when you're talking about incentive programs, are you referring, I mean, when you're talking about both incentive and compliance to get where you want to get in terms of your targets?
Correct, the combination of the two.
When you're talking about incentives, what exactly does that mean? In other words, if you're in the construction industry and you were going to be under, obviously, the NOx, PM rulings, whatever, that come up, you're going to provide incentive programs, which would, in my estimation, would have to cost the district or CARB some money.
Correct.
Provide those incentives. What is that budget? What is the incentive budget?
So this is the numbers that you see here.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the money that you need, the district
to help with purchasing
Compliance.
those equipment.
So the construction industry equipment is a little bit different situation in the South Coast because they are part of the SOON program.
Part of the what?
The SOON program.
Okay.
And so in the SOON program, as you know, the SOON provision 2449.2 of the state regulation, which we implement, allows us to provide funding to help fleets convert over to the cleanest equipment.
Right.
So
that
we
was
worked
part of that last ruling, the heavy diesel ruling that you had implemented.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have those numbers worked in.
Okay.
So are we good here?
That money comes from that, what is it, this?
For SOON program?
The
Actually,
Moyer money.
yeah,
The Moyer money,
Moyer
right,
money,
it's the
yeah.
Moyer money,
It's the
right,
Moyer
that's
money
what it
and, yeah. Okay, also I want to mention that if you have any specific question from these measures and next few slides, staff is present right now. The staff in the back can actually answer any detailed question. So actually, it's very nice of them to show up here to support us for more detailed information. And so the next slide is on the VOC. So we are done with the NOx. Moving on to the VOC measure. These are the ones that have quantified emission reductions. And starting with the fugitive one. Basically, this one.
Sean, just for reference, we talked about how much reduction is needed for NOx. Can you just tell us, for the benefit of the people here, how much is needed for VOCs?
Here for VOC, we have 10 tons.
10 tons?
I think it's, yeah. Yeah, for VOC we have 10 tons.
Is that by 2031?
Yeah. Let me see, let me check again. Yeah, these are VOC 10 tons. 10 tons 2031, yeah, that's correct.
Again, what would that percentage be from where we are now?
Percentage,
Well, in other words, if your goal is to reduce by 10 tons by the year 2031, again, going back to my original question, percentage-wise, what would that be from where we are currently? How much of a reduction percentage-wise would that be? Or do you have to just?
Oh, you mean where are we now? How many tons do we have now, right in the
Right.
basin for
Exactly, and it's
VOCs?
gonna
Yeah.
reduce it
so
by
again,
10
you're
tons.
talking about how much is 10 as a percentage of?
Yeah, right, of the current in 2016, right? But we didn't use, yeah.
We can get back to you
Yeah,
on
we
this.
can, yeah, we
Okay,
can get back.
I have an idea what that number is.
So all the numbers are in Appendix 3, the baseline emissions.
You always have an answer. You are so good.
So I would recommend that you look at those, but we can get back with you with specific.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
He wanted to know if you'd memorized that number.
Yeah, I mean, he's really Johnny on the spot with these numbers. Every question I ask, he has an answer.
Well, Henry's been here a long time and beyond.
So preliminary number is about 4%, but we're going to check on that and get back to you.
Okay.
It represents 4%.
Yeah.
So again, we want to, please correct me if I say anything wrong.
Yeah,
So our main purpose of NOx reduction is to lower the ozone concentration, right?
Yeah.
So VOC is also contributes to ozone as well. But then as our air quality modelers here, they can tell you perfectly how they model it.
Right.
So our main strategy is really on NOx reductions, because when we lower VOC reductions, actually the cost benefits is not that good, because you need a lot of VOC reductions compared to NOx reductions to get to the same amount of ozone reductions.
Right.
So that's why we concentrate really on the NOx figures.
But it helps PM 2.5.
It does somewhat, and also we do need some VOC reductions to help with ozone.
Yeah.
And a lot of the mobile source measures, especially light duty, gasoline-based, have concurrent VOC reduction. So they're here, and the ARB included consumer products as potential additional controls for VOCs for 2031.
Okay, next.
So that's 2%.
2%.
500
You got
tons per day,
2.5?
2012 emissions.
2%?
500.
It's 2012.
It's got in 2031.
Oh, it's in 2031.
Between baseline and-
3%. It's 3%.
So you're saying that it would be a 3% reduction, and the 10 tons would equal a 3% reduction from where we currently stand?
Just get this.
It didn't give us 2016.
362
360
today on VOC.
That's where we are now?
2031. Brings it down to
300%.
No, that's 3%. No,
Well, 3%.
Yeah, from baseline.
Right, from baseline, okay.
Baseline's not 2016, is it?
We're talking about the 2031 baseline. After all other regulatory actions are in place, it's down at 362.
Oh,
Right, yeah, baseline.
Henry?
Bill?
I think I recall from earlier meeting, maybe it was one of Bill's presentations, that you thought that your target for your VOC reductions would be like 1168.
Yeah, so CTS01, we have a commitment for 1 to 2 tons per day reductions going forward with VOC. And as I've stated before, Rule 1168 is undergoing amendments and has been for some time, but we think we've identified at least 1 ton per day there that the working group has some consensus around. So there's not a lot of additional, beyond that, a lot of additional VOC reductions proposed from the area source or stationary source side. But we do get a lot of VOC reduction co-benefits from those other strategies focused on NOx, especially when it comes to light duty vehicles. CARB is committed to another 10 tons per day on consumer products. So there are some VOC reductions in the plan, but not necessarily from coatings.
So you still may have the option or to look at rules like architectural coatings and some of the other coatings rules.
Yeah, we always have the option to find more. And actually, VOC reductions, while the 2023 and 2031 ozone standards deadlines are not terribly effective relative to NOx, but for the 1 hour ozone standard in 2022, it's almost as effective as NOx on a 10% basis. So we want to make sure we get those co-benefits from those other measures in place by 2022 so we can meet that standard.
So in the interest of time, we would just move forward with the slides, and
Yeah.
then perhaps you can
have
hold your
a-
questions to the end of the presentation.
Okay, so very quickly on fugitive one, this one basically looking at the further VOC reduction from oil and gas production and refinery by using advanced leak detection. And for CTSO1, basically VOC reduction from coating and solvents. Here we are looking at more reformulation for zero VOCs. And for BCM10, basically it's the green-based composting. Here we are looking at the best management practices on the chipping and grinding facilities by covering their compost area for additional reductions in VOCs. So the next slide is the PM2.5 is only one measure. This is actually the one that affecting the restaurants. There are larger restaurants and smaller restaurants are affected by this control measure. Basically for the controlling emissions from under fire, char roller is the purpose here. And for we have around 1,000 restaurant and 1,000 large restaurant and 7,000 small restaurants are affected. For larger restaurant, we are looking at ESPs like electrostatic precipitator, and for smaller one, we're looking at vent hood and cartridge filters as a method of control.
I just want to add to this, that this is included in the plan as a contingency measure. Because if we get the NOx reductions for the ozone strategy, we will meet this standard without having to implement this control. But if we don't, then this we need to adopt as a contingency that would kick in if we don't get those other reductions.
And that's for 2023.
By 2025 is our deadline for the PM2.5 plan. This BCM01 is focused on PM emissions from cooking, not the NOx emissions that was mentioned earlier.
So next slide covers the AQMD mobile source measures that we have an expert in the room. Henry can probably answer all the questions there. So we have the Mobile 10, as he mentioned, the SOON program. SOON stands for Surplus Off-Road Opt-in for NOx emissions. Basically, we are looking at the faster turnover of older in-use construction engines and diesel engines, and car mower fundings are available for this control measure. For Mobile 11, this is extended exchange program, basically lawn and garden equipment that they use like diesel engines. So here you get more reductions, NOx reduction by looking at turnover, faster turnover rate of these and exchanging for electric and zero emission or near zero emission equipment. The last one, Mobile 14, is the incentive program, actually designed for faster turnover and replacement of school buses, ocean-going vehicles, locomotives, and cargo handling equipment. And again, car mower funds, AB 923, which is the extension of car mower funds, as well as SP 1107, are the potential funding sources for this category.
And also, as we stated on the second slide.
Go to the next slide, which is off-road, federal and international, and off-road equipment. So starting with the on-road light duty, basically additional or assuming increase in sales of zero and plug-in hybrid EVs for trucks, both at the state and federal level. ARB is currently developing the heavy-duty low NOx engine standards, and may actually petition EPA to establish a national standard for trucks. On the advanced clean transit, so as you see by the name, this is applied to the transit. You see the little parentheses there, that means is savings. When you include the operating and maintenance savings as well as the fuel savings, that will actually offset the additional incremental cost of those vehicles from diesel and gasoline to CNG and electric vehicles. The last mile delivery is similar, but again applies to the heavy duty trucks and also courier and messengers section. And the further development of cleaner technology, again, this is same as before on on-road duty. This one asking for greater penetration of zero and near zero technology for this on-road heavy duty category. And the source of funds are from greenhouse gas reduction funds and ARB low carbon transportation funds and also AQIP funds.
Well, what does last mile delivery mean?
Yeah, last mile delivery actually is for meant for those trucks that they are in delivery business. For example, like courier and messengers one that they deliver packages and.
So to add on, so it's really like a delivery truck from a warehouse to the retail store would be considered last mile. Or a UPS from a warehouse delivering Amazon package to your home would be last mile.
To your home.
Or Arrowhead Spring Arrowhead Spring Water type, those type of Coca-Cola trucks.
Okay. That's very popular. I mean, that type of stuff goes on all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Question? No questions. And also, if you have any question on those measures, ARB staff is actually they are online and they work together to put these numbers to make sure that using consistent methodology. So the next category, the last slide. Okay, here we go for the last slide is off-road, federal and international. These are the categories that affect locomotives. Tier asking for more NOx reduction from or buying new locomotives, maybe tier 5 locomotives, tier 4 ocean-going vehicles, which is tier 4 vessels, and at-berth regulation, basically looking at the auxiliary engines at berths. Further development, cleaner technology, looking at further reduction and further deployment of cleaner technology in those categories. And also we have low emission diesel requirement. Basically here they are looking at establishing a standard for the use of low emission diesel. So those trucks that they currently use diesel, they have to purchase clean diesel. So that's additional costs associated with that. On the off-road equipment, we have forklift. As you see again, there's a savings right there. The operating and maintenance saving as well as fuel savings offset the incremental cost. Then we have zero emission ground airport support equipment, which actually applies to the port equipment and engines. And we have a small off-road engine. This is very similar to the lawn and garden equipment that we had, like Mobile 11 that we discussed before. And further deployment of cleaner technology, again, this is asking for further penetration of zero and near zero technology in this category. The last one actually is not a control measure, but this is basically the savings that we receive by applying zero or near zero technology to the heavy duty sector. So we can place this anywhere, but this was given us by CARB staff so that we can include that saving as part of the total cost. So you can place it here at the bottom. You can place it where we talk about the heavy duty fuels. So this concludes my presentation, and now we're ready to answer questions.
Shaw, this is
Yes,
Steve.
sir.
I have two questions.
Yes.
Help me interpret where it says further deployment, because those are the very, very large numbers. Are these things that we know? Are these what we think is needed, but we don't know exactly how it's going to be done? Where is the money going to come for further deployment? So that's the first question. And the second one is, talk to me about the incentives, the $11 billion for on-road light duty. Do we have a funding source? What are the specifics under that? It seems like these are the very biggest numbers in the whole presentation.
Steve, this is Henry Hogo. Let me see if I can help answer this question. The assumptions that were made by ARB, and ARB staff is on the line, so Mallory can address this, but I just want to say that we work closely with ARB staff on identifying what the funding needs would be. And for light duty vehicles, the assumption right now is that a funding level of $9,000 to $10,000 per zero emission vehicle would be needed to accelerate the deployment of zero emission and plug-in hybrid vehicles over the next 10 to 15 years. So that is the bottom line number. And
is that what you mean by the incentives?
For this one, and right now we're looking at where funding could be made available. And this is the first round of analysis, and so we understand this scenario because we're looking at equal share at this point based on ARB's mobile source strategy. But when we look at potential to perhaps accelerate having heavy duty trucks get about the same amount of emission reductions as the light duty vehicle sector. We're talking somewhere between 5 and 7 tons per day of NOx, that if we focus more on heavy duty trucks to get the between 5 and 7 tons per day of reduction, especially if those trucks go to a near zero type of combustion engine, that it'd be much more cost effective to get those tons, and there would be a reduction in the funding need in the light duty sector.
So one more question, if I can. Are the solutions the responsibility of ARB and the state? What is the district's role in the CARB mobile source measures?
So under the further deployment measures that are listed in the CARB mobile source strategy, you'll see that the implementing agencies are CARB, US EPA, and South Coast AQMP. And in CARB's presentation on these further deployment measure, they mentioned 4 implementation strategies. The first one is incentives programs. Second, as new technologies are deployed, they will look at whether there will be a need for developing new regulations or extending existing regulations to deploy those new technologies. Third, they're looking at the operational efficiencies of mobile source in terms of where they're used and how they're routed. So operational efficiency, if they can be quantified, can be placed into the SIP. We are discussing with EPA on how to do that over the next few years. So want to do that. And lastly, any type of efficiencies associated with autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles would be worked into the analysis for emissions co-benefit. So those 4 concepts for these further deployment measures will be looked at. We based our analysis on as if funding was the only concept to implement these measures. So the numbers you see in the AQMP represents an upper limit, and they do not necessarily reflect what will be truly needed as we go into implementing the AQMP, because other actions that are not quantified at this time, such as operational efficiencies, can be worked in, then the total dollar amount needed for the program will go down. The overall cost of the program can go down also as we recognize the co-benefits of with emission reductions from operational efficiencies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one quick question. So in the first slide, it said it will, the AQMP is designed to attain the 80 ppb 2023 and 75 ppb in 2031. So, because the ozone net has been revised to 70 ppb. So I wonder I don't know whether the district has to follow the NAC or you have flexibility, or how do you work this out with EPA?
So this is Henry Hogo again. On the 70 ppb standard, which was promulgated last year, that the requirements for implementation, the guidelines have not come out yet, and we will be required to do a new AQMP for that standard, probably in the 2019, 2020 timeframe. And so, but we will take an initial look at that standard as part of this AQMP. And I believe, Mike, we do have a section, or
Yeah.
we do have a section on it now.
Right, we do have a blurb. It should be in chapter 5 that talks about
In chapter 5 of the AQMP. So there are no requirements to demonstrate attainment of this standard.
Okay, so not this term. And the district does have the flexibility to not to do it this term, but you will say you will consider it in the next AQMP.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Julia?
Great. Julia Lester, Rambo, and Byron. Thank you for this information before the report comes out, because it will help as we formulate comments on the AQMP itself. One request that I would make to facilitate that, and actually I make it as a pretty strong request, is you have a very nice summary of the preliminary cost study that was provided as a handout to this item. I would like to see that we would have a similar type of table for 2023 with the cost broken out between the regulatory and the incentives, and then the annualized cost for that, because certain reductions have to be front-loaded for 2023, and I think it'll give us a better idea of what that information in terms of the scope and what we need to be working on as soon as you guys adopt this. So I would ask that that you post it for this group and then have it in the chapter, the socioeconomic report itself, to provide the cost broken out also for 2017 to 2023.
Julia, do you refer to the spending that we expect to be occurred before 2023?
Just the exact same way you did this.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of reductions that was in CARB's mobile source strategy, and in yours you have a certain reductions associated with 2023.
Right.
And so there's got to be costs associated with that, either the regulatory costs or the incentive costs. I'm trying to get an understanding how much we have to get done by 2023, and then I can back calculate what the rate is from 2023 to 2031.
Right. So I think it's actually not so straightforward to do this, because some of the equipment that you purchase in, let's say, before 2023, let's say 2022, it will also contribute to emission reductions in 2031, because the equipment life is long enough to lead to the emission reduction.
I think that's fine. I'm not asking for something that breaks out between the two standards, but just even what the assumptions are going into what the cost is to produce the cleaner vehicles to meet the 2023 standard, and also where the money is being used to help meet the 2031 standard.
Yeah, can we discuss more afterwards offline?
Yeah,
Sure.
because-
Yeah.
And the reason is because the way the reductions are associated, particularly for some of them, there's a larger weighting for 2021 than 2023 rather than 2031. And I want to understand if we have to have and I know CARB is working on a financing plan. That's the kind of information that they would need for a financing plan anyway. So it would help us try to understand what are the requirements as soon as you guys adopt the AQMP right away for that.
Let's talk more afterwards.
Sure, be happy to.
So I want to refer, Julie, I want to refer you to the end of chapter 4. There are 6 tables that show an analysis of the funding that would be needed. And so that basically lays out what type of funding levels by source category we would need. And it also gives you a population of vehicles associated with the emission reductions. So when you look at the bottom line number for in 2023, the further deployment measures adds up to about 107 tons per day by themselves.
Right.
And so we did an analysis that shows that if you were able to fund, let's say, heavy-duty trucks for $50,000 or provide more funding for $30,000 per ton, and then ultimately $50,000 per ton if it was zero emission, that's the type of funding level. So we do give you a decent idea of what the number of vehicles and pieces of equipment that will need to be turned over to get to those emission reductions. And we
And
indicated
is the
that
assumption that all of that is going to be coming from incentives as opposed to regulatory because of the rulemaking?
as I mentioned, we did this analysis for the further deployment measure, looking at the incentives as the maximum. So the other 3 concepts that I mentioned, if they were to be implemented in some level, will reduce that amount. But this will be considered the upper limit of funding that would be needed.
And I will talk with Elaine, just
Okay.
trying to understand it. I mean, I think I understand where you're going and where to go in chapter 4 to find that, but just in general, it's going to make it harder for me to understand
Yeah.
what you're going
It's a little
I will talk with
complicated,
Elaine
we can
afterwards.
talk afterwards.
Sure, absolutely.
David Rothbard, Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. Question for you, for all of the categories in the summary sheets of the last page of the presentation, will there be detail where you can go and figure out how you calculated the present value cost as far as, just say for a stationary source, here's where the cost came from, be able
Yes.
to double check that?
That would be an appendix. So we are going to prepare an appendix, so explain all the details of the.
And we also have the
one-
worksheet.
Certain rules in the past where maybe industry would say this seems to be much cheaper than it actually is. We'd like to take a look at that and see if this is realistic from our experience and give feedback on that.
Yeah.
And my other question maybe to Henry is, we're relying on a lot of funding to get the mobile sources, federal sources to clean up. And one of the major ones is the further deployment. And I see under on-road heavy duty for further deployment, the present value cost is about 4.4 billion, but yet the present value incentives is only 252 million. So you're saying it's a high end of what you think is necessary to incentivize that change out?
The present value cost is the total cost of the truck. So we based it on our current levels of funding. So for example, in the Proposition 1B, it's $50,000 per truck for an operator to turn over an older truck and get a newer truck. And we use that level of funding on a per truck basis. And what we found, and this is sort of a high end right now, but when you look at the cost, that truck still costs $100,000 to $150,000. So that cost is still there. But in some cases, when trucks are just, instead of buying a new truck, it could be a newer used truck, in which case it would be much cheaper. And we've been seeing that happen. So we just based it on a new truck purchase. And that's why there's a difference in the total cost versus the funding.
And when we're talking about that as far as depending on the price of replacing a vehicle, is there any analysis as far as saying how much out-of-pocket cost, say, a trucker would have to pay to replace a vehicle. The incentive itself is not going to pay 100% of the cost, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So what's the motivation for someone to do this within the time frame you're specifying?
Well,
That's what I'm getting at.
right now we're looking at voluntary, so we'll have to see. Because what we're finding and under ARB's technology assessment, especially for heavy duty trucks, is that going to the 0.02 gram standard may not be all that much different than what the truck costs today. So by providing $50,000 as an incentive, may be enough for many fleets to just go ahead and convert to this newer engine that has a lower standard rather than buying a 2010 engine at the same standard. So there are different things at play here, but we're seeing that right now with the 0.02 gram engine that you have for natural gas, that you have a natural gas engine at 0.2 grams certified at that level, and yet you have the same engine at 0.02 gram. So we're offering through the MSRC program right now a funding differential to go to the 0.02 gram, so that if you're looking at buying a natural gas engine, we would like to incentivize you to buy the 0.02 gram. We're also looking at whether as fleet operators subject to the truck and bus regulation, that they all have to meet a 2010 engine standard by 2023, whether these types of incentives can be such that they offset that differential cost of going to 0.02 gram. So rather than buying a 2010, they have to buy a 2010 engine anyway. So an engine meeting the 2010 standard, but can we provide sufficient incentive for them to buy 0.02 gram? So it not necessarily have to be all that much more in terms of if a traditional type of replacement program.
So I would propose that we move to the next agenda item, and if you have any more questions, we can always discuss at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, before we start, let's see whether if ARB has some stuff, some comments on this, like Mallory or.
Maybe at the end of the meeting.
Layouts. A note from one of the participants on the phone, some of them are muted. They wanted to comment. We can't seem to hear them. And I think your webcast is not working properly.
So actually, people who would like to participate in this meeting, because it's Brown Act, they can only actively participate either by coming here or from the teleconference locations listed on the agenda. So for other participants, they are calling in through the listen-only line, and they cannot.
They're censored.
They are not censored, but then they can always submit comments to us afterwards.
Complying with the law here.
Right. And let's move to the next agenda item.
So Tony Oliver, I'll be presenting the preliminary estimates for the public health benefit analysis of the draft 2016 AQMP. So get started on that right now. So just to briefly introduce the topic, implementation of the draft 2016 AQMP will result in improved air quality in terms of both ozone and PM2.5 concentrations in the basin. And research has shown that improved air quality will result in reduced incidences of mortality and morbidity endpoints. And so as part of the socioeconomic analysis of the 2016 AQMP, we quantify the effects of this improved air quality on reduced health incidences, and then also use valuation methods to monetize these health impacts. And this is similar methods that were used in previous air quality economic analysis of previous air quality management plans in 2007 and 2012. And so just to kind of give you an overview of the method being used here, we have this nice graph illustration of the methodology. And so we can focus here on the health impact function, and this is the function that tells the change in incidence of a particular health endpoint based on these variables which are described and a parameter estimate, and I'll just go through those here. So we estimate the health impact based on a baseline incidence for the endpoint. This is the incidence of a particular endpoint, for example, mortality, from historically observed levels or projections. Then we have importantly, the change in air quality. So this is really fundamental to the analysis. How much does air quality improve? And this is what the impacts are being estimated from. And then also the affected population. And down below, you can kind of see some maps of what those data might look like at a low resolution level. And then importantly, we have the effect estimate, and that is comes from the epidemiological research, and this is what are called concentration response functions. These functions relate the concentration of a particular pollutant to the incidence of a health endpoint. And you can see kind of in that graph there, these are estimated using the statistical methods, and you can get this beta coefficient, which is an estimate of the effect of this pollutant on that endpoint, and that goes into the health impact function there. And so when we combine all these things together with the data and the effect estimate, then we can estimate the health impact of improving air quality.
Air quality change is that's numbers.
Yes. Yeah. So let's kind of go through that. So the data. So that's the general function. So the specific data that goes in here is foremost is the air quality change, and these are taken from the baseline and control scenarios for 2023 and 2031 from implementation of the air quality management plan. And these are 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer grid cell level air quality concentrations. And these are provided by our air quality modelers, and the descriptions of those are in the draft AQMP report. Then we have a population forecast, and this is provided or taken from the SCAG forecast, their growth forecast for RTP SES. And this is also at the 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer grid level, and is the same population forecast that we use for our regional economic impact modeling. Then we have a baseline mortality and morbidity incidence rates by age group, by county. And these, for mortality, these are based on historical data, and then projections are based on a national forecast of how those change over time. We hope to update those when we get some more local forecasts of mortality rates, and that's why these are preliminary estimates at this point. But yeah, so hopefully we can get those soon, and we'll update the analysis as we do that. We have the concentration response functions. We use LA or California specific estimates where they were available, and I'll talk more about those in a moment when I get to the results. And then for the valuation methods, we use income to adjust the valuation estimates, and our forecast of income growth comes from Department of Finance, California. And just briefly mention, to do the analysis, we use the BenMap tool, which is published by US EPA, and it implements a systematic method to kind of take all these data and do the health impact analysis and economic valuation of those. It's been used for the previous AQMPs, 2007 and 2012, and it's publicly available. And there's more information on this link here. So to get to the actual data here, so we have the air quality changes. These are presented here for 2031, and also there are similar calculations for 2023, but I am just showing 2031 here. So on the left, we have the change in ozone concentration, and then on the right, we have the change in PM 2.5 concentration. This is the average of the daily values of those metrics there, and you can kind of, just by looking at it, see how the concentration, the changes are concentrated. For ozone, it's a bit towards the inland area, Riverside and San Bernardino counties, and then the PM is more concentrated in Los Angeles County, the changes. And so this will have an effect on our impact estimates because it takes into account where people are living. Okay.
Small numbers. I mean, the print is small.
He's got a lot of words.
Must be a reason for this.
Those are for young eyes, not for.
Wow. You have some special
They're
glasses?
pretty small.
Yeah, we can try to zoom in next time.
Yeah, zoom in.
Question on the figure.
Sure.
Yeah, so those reductions, that's not just reductions to the standard, right? So that's reductions like
This is-
2031
yeah.
PM 2.5 is not to meet the PM 2.5 standard, but it also includes reductions occurring.
Yeah, it has co-benefits from the meeting the ozone standard as well. Yeah, so this is the difference between what would happen without the measures and with the measures.
All of the measures, okay.
Yes, all of the measures. Okay. So then based on these data and the air quality changes, we estimate the health impacts for mortality. And this uses the health impact methodology, which I just discussed in the previous slide. And we also further enhance this using a pooling method. So in the research, there can be many studies that look at the relationship between pollutant concentration and a health endpoint. And so we want to take those into account in our analysis. So we pool these studies together, as I'll describe here, and that allows us to take account of more than one study on these. These CR functions are based on recommendations from Industrial Economics, which is a consultant on this analysis of providing memos on these studies and recommendations. And yeah, and so the recommendation for ozone was to pull LA-specific estimates from the National Morbidity and Mortality Air Pollution Study and meta-analysis from a Bell et al. Study 2005. And then PM 2.5 is recommending to pull 4 estimates. We have Jared et al. 2005 and 2013, and then 2 estimates from Krusky, which was 2009. And then for the health impact, we assume no threshold effects for our analysis, and this is based on the recommendations of Industrial Economics and its current US EPA practice. And then also let me say that these are preliminary estimates. In our written report, we'll also be testing a sensitivity analysis where we check the sensitivity of our results to different concentration response functions, and those will be described in the write-up. So this is the results here in table form. This is the impact on reduced mortality incidences from improved air quality in 2023 and 2031. So we can see from ozone in 2023, we'd expect to reduce about 51 mortality incidences. And in 2031, that increases to 87. And then for PM, long-term PM 2.5 exposure, it's a much larger impact, reducing about 2,000 mortality incidences. And then in 2031, it increases to 2,400. And I have those kind of broken down by county there. And I actually have a graph here so you can kind of see where those mortality incidences avoided are located in our analysis. And as shown in the table, the PM 2.5 reductions are much greater than ozone.
So Anthony, you're in essence what you're saying is that the difference between 2023 and 2031 is that less people are dying?
It will have a greater level of improved air quality. The air quality improves more than 2023, so that prevents more mortalities from these.
Prevents more?
Yes.
This is for the entire area that SCAD covers? The AQMD covers, right?
It also includes the 4-county area.
4 counties, right?
Yeah.
Tony, this is Jane. So the numbers in this table you just talked about, is that the cumulative or just the number in that year?
These are the numbers in that year.
Okay.
This Oh, go ahead.
So since you brought that up, I will be doing the analysis for every year in our analysis horizon 2017 to 2031, and those will be in the written report of the economic analysis when that's completed.
Right, okay.
You know, one of the areas where I work is dust, wind blowing dust in the deserts. Problems there, big problems too. This doesn't address that, does it? In terms of mortality or in this improvement that we're talking about, this really doesn't address that issue, does it?
I mean, it's reductions in PM 2.5, so.
Well,
I don't think dust would be.
Well, we get, certainly when we have the big dust storms out there, PM 2.5 goes up as well as PM 10. But I don't think this covers that directly, does it? The wind blowing business?
Dust is mostly PM10.
Yeah, I mean, but there's a fine fraction of it, of course, yeah. But that's really not directed to that, is it?
No, right. So like desert dust.
Yeah, the desert
is
dust I'm
not,
talking
yeah,
about.
it's not.
Yeah,
I mean, it's in the model, but we don't expect changes in dust from desert areas.
So we do carry, as Scott was saying, we do have it in train road dust as part of the wind-blown dust, and we do have wildfires and all the other types of sources of PM. And they're modeled, but we have no measures for those.
Okay.
Anthony? Julia Lester, Granville Environment. I have a question on this graph. So you just said that you're going to provide this information for every year between 2017 and 2031.
Yes.
I'm going to thank you for that, because that's actually something I've been asked for a number of years. Because I'm trying to understand, you know, if I look at that graph, most of the mortality reduction is in the greater LA, Orange County area,
right.
Where the PM 2.5 levels are going to be way below the standard. So
right.
PM 2.5 is the effect of essentially over control. And I've been trying to understand how those dollars, when we're applying them to mortality statistics, what's directly related to those different reductions for policy reasons.
Okay, well, I mean, for the...
So Julia, I just wanted to remind you that, so the PM 2.5 effect we're looking at really comes from ozone co-benefits.
Absolutely, no.
Right.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to understand, because if you look at the cost for the PM strategy versus for the ozone strategy, and then just looking at your mortalities all cause, from 2023 to 2031, the delta is about 300, which is like a tenth of what we get from going 2017 to 2023. So in my mind, I'm just trying to see what bang for the buck we're getting on control costs as it compares to the health benefit costs. It sounds like you're going to be providing the information that I would at least be able to play with that and calculate that on my own.
And again, so PM 2.5 control measure, as Phil just said, that it's a contingency measure. So we include a part of the cost, but then actually it might be an overestimate in terms of that control measure. So the major bulk of the total cost is really on the ozone.
Right? I'm assuming these strategies are really assuming you don't need the contingency. It's the NOx reductions you're doing for ozone through 2025 that get you that reduction for PM mortality. I will try to be careful when I split these out, but I have been always very curious in this information in terms of cost effectiveness. So it sounds like I'm going to get the information. I can at least do some numbers and you can tell me what I do wrong.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anthony, just a couple of quick things. I know you guys are good, but in terms of this modeling, but I think that rounding off to the nearest hundreds is a little excessive, you know, in this graph that we can't see.
Yeah, sorry about the small text, but
I mean, I just think that
yeah, the reason that's done actually
hundreds of a ppb is a little. I think now we're talking.
These are actually incidences avoided, and the reason it's like that is because the scale between PM and ozone related avoidances of mortality are quite different. So we had to kind of use a fine scale there to show them on the same in the same. Oh, you're talking about a different graph? Or?
I'm talking about this right here.
Yeah, sure.
The
Okay.
one, the
So
numbers
the-
that need a
the previous-
telescope.
But it
Yeah,
goes
I mean,
with
it's
this, like,
just
the
to kind
comparison.
of trying to show like a continuous color spectrum. I mean,
No, I'm
you're
just saying that I just think this is kind of laughable to say you can
But Rob,
change it.
if they don't go to less than one mortality, then the ozone map would be blank.
Oh, no,
No.
wait,
That's-
we're talking about the same map. Julie, are we talking about the same map? This says projected
Oh,
air
the air
quality,
quality changes.
air quality changes. That's what I'm talking
I
about.
agree with you on significant figures, Rob, 100%.
so you're
Yeah.
suggesting we should
To the nearest
round those,
10,
round those
to the nearest 10. I think
Okay.
so. I think that's more believable.
Okay.
I mean, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
considering what we know
it's a
about how well we
calculation
model.
from this, yeah, the data, so we can round it to a 10.
That makes more sense.
Okay. So next slide here, we're applying the same methodology as for mortality to morbidity incidences. These are based on a mini concentration response functions for each endpoint here. And there's a lot to go over here, I know, so I just included this as a sheet in the handout so you can review that. And it also includes more detail on the statistical intervals for which these impacts are estimated. So I'll leave you to look that over and can move to the next portion here, which is the valuation. So here we're doing the valuation of the health impacts that I just showed. And this is based on a few components here. First, the value of avoided mortality incidence is based on the value of statistical life. And this is basically the willingness to pay of society to reduce health risks such that it would save a statistical life. And this is based, the values for this is 9 million with a range of 4.2 to 13.7 million. This is from, I don't have the citation on the sheet, but it's Robinson and Hammett 2015. And this is recommended from Industrial Economics. And it also falls within the range of another recent study is Viscusi 2015. So that's the first part of that. And then we also have a income elasticity. This is applied to the VSL. The concept here is that the value of statistical life would change with income. If think of a kind of basic economic concept, an economic good, as your income increases, you're willing to pay more for it. And that's the concept of income elasticity here. Industrial Economics has recommended an income elasticity of 1.1 from Viscusi 2015. This value can be interpreted as a 1% change in income would lead to a 1.1% change in the VSL. And for sensitivity analysis, we use values of 0 and 1.4. And then the third component here is 20-year cessation lag for PM 2.5. And this is the concept that the avoided mortalities from exposure to PM 2.5 is spread over a 20-year period. They don't all happen in 1 year. And this is recommended from EPA's Environmental Economic Scientific Advisory Board white paper.
So Anthony,
Yes.
explain to me the lower bound, the midpoint, and the upper bound.
Yeah, so I was just going to get to that.
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
so thank you, Bill. So I'll explain that right now. So the midpoint here in bold is calculated using the recommended values of 9 million and income elasticity of 1.1 together, and that's kind of our midpoint estimate. Then I have these lower and upper bounds. These can be thought of as kind of extreme lower and upper bounds valuation of the average health impact. So the lower bound includes both the $4.2 million VSL, the lowest recommended VSL, and no income elasticity, so it doesn't change as income increases. And then similarly on the upper bound, I have the highest VSL 13.7 million and the higher recommended income elasticity of 1.4. So VSL grows more quickly as income increases. And so these are all presented here as sensitivity. You can see how the numbers change based on those assumptions. In 2023, we have a total valuation midpoint of 26.8 billion, with a lower bound of 9.1 and an upper of 49.4. And then 2031, it increases due to improved air quality and as well as increasing income. And we have 36 billion as a midpoint with 10 billion as a lower bound and 71 as an upper bound.
I guess I got a question here then. Whether it's lower, midpoint, or upper, the number that you have there, 4.2 versus 9 million, are those numbers what a person would earn in a period of time, or is that the value of a human life?
This is estimate based on many studies that look at how much society is willing to pay to avoid a health risk, or how much they are compensated for taking an additional health risk. And when you add those up, those health risks up to over a population, you can find the value for reducing one mortality, and that's what these values represent.
So you're assuming that society is willing to pay more
for reducing when income increases.
As clean air, as air improves?
No. No.
It's the value of the
It's the value.
Yeah, so as income grows, we're assuming that they're willing to pay more to reduce their health risk of mortality.
So the difference between 4.29 million and 13.7 million, those reflects the uncertainty in all those studies. Because we all know that when we do a study, it's based on statistics, and then there are always all sorts of uncertainty around it. So in order to acknowledge those uncertainty, we want to provide you with the range of the values that have been found in all those studies. And so it does not reflect like any different factors. So for example, air quality or like an individual's identity, those kind of things. It's just basically statistics.
So when I look at your rule 1402, and you have $4 million for cancer case avoidance, is that the same thing?
1402.
You just expressed it differently.
We will have to talk to the rule writers to know where they cited the number. Yeah. So
Okay, this is a rule that's been in effect for years, so and it was amended in 2015.
So Bill, let us get back with you on
Yeah.
that, because if you look at the room, we have a new generation of staff, and so that rule has been in place for quite a long time. If you don't mind.
So you're saying that since 2015, that amended June 2015, that the data is old?
No, we just, I'm not quite sure how to answer your question at this point, but want to make sure we know what that information was at the time of the amendment.
Right.
Yes.
And
that number has been there for a while, is that what you're saying? Or just?
we just need to understand the context of the number.
Yeah. They don't know where
Yeah.
right. Find out first.
Right.
But they're not the same staff that develop law. No, Anthony?
Yes. Or did you have a question first, or I think someone said it?
This $9 million, is that regardless of age?
Yes, this is recommended by our consultant industrial economics actually this year, the EPA Scientific Advisory Board for Environmental Economics recommended not adjusting VSL for age. There's not support in the literature for that at this time. So
it's your position that someone who's 65 will spend the same amount of money as someone who's 10?
It's not what they'll spend, it's what we'll spend.
Okay, say that.
Yeah, it is true, it's what we're deciding to pay for.
so let's not have a conversation within the audience.
Oh, sorry.
If there are questions to the advisory group
Julia,
or staff.
you have a question?
I hope there's a layman's explanation, Anthony, on when I look at the mortality all-cause, when you have here,
Mhm.
it goes from 26.8 to 36.7 for
Right.
the midpoint.
Mhm.
And that's the difference in about 10 to 15%, because we go from a mortality, premature mortalities avoided from about 2,200 to about 2,600. And I don't
Right.
understand why that cost goes up 50%, whereas if you look at mortality all-cause with your lower bound, it goes
Mhm.
from 9 to 10.6.
Yeah, so
Which is a little over 10%,
Mhm.
which makes sense to me because that's the increase in the number of mortality.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So a lot of that is from income growth. So we have an income elasticity here.
In 7 years.
Right. So real income growth is projected at about 1.9% a year, and based on that, the VSL increases, and that's why you have more than just the mortality incidence between that time gap. So it's compounding over that time, and it's that's where that comes from.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean,
I'm
I
gonna
can
try
maybe
to
show you
understand that because
the
clearly
calculation if you'd like.
The fact that it goes up for the lower bound, it goes up by 10%, but for the midpoint, it's going up by 50%.
So the lower bound actually does not include any income elasticity. We assume that people will not pay more for even if they get richer.
Yeah.
But then when we move to the second column, so the epsilon, the income elasticity, it becomes 1.1. So we assume that people will be willing to pay more as they get wealthier for health risk reductions. So the increase that you see, they come from two sources. So one is from air quality changes, and then another one is, actually three sources, air quality changes, and also we have a different VSL, and the third is that there's different effects coming from income
Does
growth.
the 2% per year raise, does that account in any way for the fact that that's not probably a net increase? It's a real increase, because obviously the cost of inflation and everything
Right.
else go up. So,
Yeah, so
I
we-
may have
that's-
gained 14% income, but everything else I pay for is 14. So
Right.
really, I'm no more wealthy.
Yeah, so we adjust for that, so we have a real income growth, which is taking account of inflation as well.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to tell my bosses that because
Okay.
Really?
I'm going to renegotiate.
Yeah, good luck with that one, Julia.
So yeah, this is one of the options there. I mean, we have like several numbers presented there, so we don't have to go with that. We're just showing you.
So, I mean, sure. No, I understand. This is really going to help me with comments. So I'm actually very happy with the answers. I understand.
So again, the income growth projections are based on California Department of Finance projections.
But actually, that's what this election's all about. Actually, for the middle class, which may not be the majority of Americans anymore, real income over the last 20 years actually declined.
Yeah.
So the income elasticity should be going down, right? It should be negative.
This is total personal income growth for the state, so that's
Of the
the
state.
forecast that's used
Of
here.
the state.
Of the state,
Not
not
Right.
the region?
That they, DOF has a state forecast.
Yeah, so this is not our region. But what's actually going on
It
here in Southern
incorporates
California.
all of California, so.
Okay.
So as we stated before, we try to use local data as much as possible. But if local data is not available, then we will have to go to the higher level of geographical area. So we made an attempt to look at the local data, but we didn't find any. That's why we're using the California projections.
Would SCAG have those numbers?
We did contact the staff, and then they do not produce income projections.
But it is true that depending on where you fall in the income bracket, it has changed. The percentages, real income advance
Right.
over the last 20 years is incredibly different.
Right, so the standard practice
And I
for
don't
this
know
kind
how
of
you-
analysis is that we look at an average person in the total population. So we do not, in the evaluation of the health benefits, we do not distinguish the difference among all our populations. So we apply a single value of the VSL, so it's an average figure.
There's another thing too that we discussed in one of our earlier meetings. Value, there's also an aesthetics value which increases with decreasing
Visibility.
pollution. Yeah, visibility, aesthetics, feeling good, all that type of stuff. We know that.
Tony, would you like to answer?
And I'm wondering if any of that gets incorporated into this benefits.
It's not included in this analysis here.
Because it's really an important thing, because I hear a lot of people, I get out on the street and
So
and people now say, geez, I can see the mountains again. It's incredible. Whereas back in the 50s, this is before your time.
So Rob, we discussed this in previous
Right, we
STMPR
did.
meetings. So
Yeah, but
for
I'm
those
just saying,
benefits,
is that going to be included in this benefit?
No.
no, we were going to have qualitative discussions because the methodology that we used in the past to quantify visibility benefits, we actually received recommendations from APT associates that the literature might be too outdated. So we need to update our literature and then update our methodology to quantify those benefits. But we're going to discuss them qualitatively in our report.
Well, and I made a suggestion, I think, because I work with the Park Service on this, the whole visibility business. And I think you need to get in touch with the Park Service, people like Bill Maum and so on. We're just having a visibility conference where we're going to discuss this type of thing.
Right.
So
now we do whatever we can do.
I think you can get some updated numbers, because this turns out to be very, very important to those Class 1 visibility areas in this country, particularly the parks. And there is some updated literature on this, the values and all that type of stuff.
It will take us some time to get the literature update, and then we'll do that in the next plan.
But if you do have some recommendations on literature, you can provide those. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, in addition, we are not going to quantify agricultural benefit and material benefit as well. We used to quantify those, but not anymore. We are
So,
going to
Tony?
add this those
Yeah,
qualitative.
so
The final slide?
Yeah, so let's finish this up here. So the next part is the evaluation for morbidity, and these are using a cost of illness avoided approach, representing the cost of the avoided cost of healthcare, and then lost days at work and productivity, and that's what these are based on from those previous health impact estimates. These are on a much lower scale here. You can see we have cost of illness avoided in 2023 is 123 million, and in 2031 is 162 million.
And this is for ozone and PM 2.5 only?
Yes. Okay, so let's, this is just to summarize what we've already discussed here is the total from mortality and morbidity monetized benefits. It's about 27 billion in 2023 and 37 billion in 2031. As I mentioned before, I'll be doing these analysis for every other year from 2017 to 2031, so we can get a total present worth value and an annual average, which will be included in our draft report. And we will be doing the sensitivity analysis I mentioned as well.
So then maybe simply, since you're not going to quantify these other things that you're talking about, is just to make a statement about that. Just say this is a lower estimate and does not include these following potential benefits. Just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So at least then it's been recognized, but we're just not going to consider it.
Yes. So we'll have a section in the report that describes these benefits qualitatively, but they're not. We mentioned they're not quantified here.
Right.
I have a question after that. You say here in the absence of substantial information in the scientific literature, Lane mentioned something about if there is regional data available. I guess there isn't. We use state data. I think at the beginning of the meeting, Elaine, you mentioned something that two scientists took exception to the morbidity.
The mortality effects.
Is there, is there any way that, considering the cost in this and what you're claiming to be the benefits, that we could benefit from their findings, which I guess are going to be somewhat at odds or maybe enhance yours, I don't know, during this process.
Would you like to answer?
Yeah, so I was wondering, I had another meeting run late, this is the beginning of this meeting, but, you know, I think, you know, I understand, you know, which comments I think, you know, we were referring to. I think we spoke briefly about that earlier this week. You know, these are, you know, two scientists who have their, you know, comments and their, you know, analysis.
35 years of data.
And they may have
in this area.
And they may have data, and you know, I think, you know, their comments are certainly welcome, and you know, we need to take their comments in context of the other evidence that exists in scientific literature as well. So that's where we're at.
So I guess is that a yes? You're receptive to that input, or no, you're not?
Yes, we are receptive to input. Yes, you know, but you know, to say that, you know, this is the only input that we take, no, of course not. What, right?
Whether it'll change your mind to something else, you know what I mean?
So to add on to Joe Kay's comments, that the health effects appendix actually will go to the advisory council.
It's already gone to the advisory
It's gone to,
council.
but there will be a meeting
And
and full public hearing on
I'm
it.
part of the advisory council, and this is something that, you know, I for one would be concerned with. So.
And Dr. Enstrom had commented in previous AQMP on the validity of the analysis on PM in the past. So we have received those comments in the past, and we'll consider them as we move forward. We do work closely with ARB and with OEHA and other health agencies when we look at all these studies. So take all the evidence in for consideration.
And I also want to add that Dr. Enstrom and also other people who have similar opinions, they actually also send comment letters to our contractor, Industrial Economics, and asking them to take those studies that they recommended, I mean, Dr. Armstrong and other people recommended into account. So after careful consideration, Industrial Economics still thinks that their recommendations should be adopted by us. So they would not change their recommendations based on the reports and comments received and from Dr. Armstrong.
And is their research done with a cohort that's local?
Yes, a lot of the...
In other words, Southern California.
Right. So actually the concentration response functions that we use for PM 2.5 mortality, they are all local LA specific relationships. And in order to account for any uncertainty of those relationships, we are also going to do sensitivity analysis using larger sample studies that either look at California or US as a whole. So those ones, they have a bigger sample, and when it's a bigger sample, their statistical power is usually stronger as well.
Elaine, maybe Joe Kay can answer this. Bill's question was whether the studies that Dr. Enstrom is referring to, are they local or are they more national based? Or
Dr. Young as well.
They use LA samples.
They're LA samples also.
Right. Okay. So if you have any additional questions, let's hold it until the end of the meeting, and let's move to the next agenda item. Thanks again, Mary Chen, for agreeing to do the presentation.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I assume it's the...
Yeah,
right
I'm
one.
going to...
I'll take it personally. Hi, I'm Mary Jana Lawson with the County of San Bernardino. I do economic development, and I have since basically 1992 in California. And a number of people have asked me, how do you think you can attract business to California? Why are you still there? Why don't you go to another state? In fact, I had a job offer in the last couple of years from the state of Georgia. Hey, you want to be our representative in LA so that you can attract companies to our state? Okay.
Sounds
So
like
I get
Texas.
up. Who's driven out the 10, with the exception of Dwayne? Who's driven out the 10 freeway? Oh, I'm sorry you can't stay with us. Maybe we can make it up next time. Driven out the 10 freeway and taken a look at the poor people who live in our county.
Yeah.
Okay? That's why I get up in the morning. I could retire. Okay? I could walk out the door with retirement and never go back to work. Okay? But I get up every morning because I believe that there is work to do. And there is work to do to help people out of poverty. And the way we do that is through education and a job, a good paying job. And I think we can all agree on that. And I think we can all agree on the fact that the federal government, through the state, is going to impose restrictions on business. And we have to figure out a way to work together, right? We may argue about the numbers, we may argue about the sources, we may argue about the interpretation of the numbers, okay? My uncle just retired as a professor from MIT. He's the engineer in the family, I'm the CPA, okay? I'm reality-based. This is what's happening, gang, okay? So what's happening is CEOs are telling us most of the time we rank dead last. Unless we are a technology business, California ranks dead last when it comes to site selection. Now, in the real estate business, you're familiar with those brokers who put up their signs on vacant land, like C.B. Richard Ellis and the rest of them. Call me about this site, right? Or you want to lease this building, call me. There's another group of people who represent businesses, they're tenant reps, okay? They represent Coca-Cola, or they represent your constituents, the small business people who are trying to make that payroll, okay? Let me give you a kind of a case study. Cressa Partners was started in Boston. There's a partner in LA by the name of Jerry Porter. Partners CEO is in Boston. So I go, they don't come to me, okay? I go to them and I sit down and I say, look at this educational program, take a look at our workforce, take a look at our transportation infrastructure, because whether we like it or not, we have one of the largest ports in the world, or if not the largest port in the world. Okay, we're not going to pick up the ports and move them. Okay, so we have assets here. But when I go to Boston and I meet with Cressa and those guys, they sit me down and they say, MJ, you're great and all, but when I sit down with my clients and I start working on those spreadsheets, the CEOs tell me we will not consider California, period, because of the regulatory environment and the cost of doing business. So I know that there are rule makers in here, and I hope I assume that I know what you do. What I want to do today is share with you enough information so you stop and you think, okay, how can we do this, make the EPA happy, and still help Mary Jane do her job of fighting poverty? Okay? So here's what these site selectors at Cressa and all the other firms want to know. They want to know about our skilled labor, they want to know about our transportation and telecom, and this is all in your packet. I won't go over it in the interest of time. All right? The people who are responding to this survey, they're manufacturing. Yes, they're logistics, but they're financial services. These are the office jobs. These are the jobs we need, okay? The insurance companies, the financial companies. Why don't we get together and say, hey, we're the new and improved AQMD. We're working with County of San Bernardino to roll this out. And instead of striking fear in the hearts of his members, let's do something different. Let's help people comply. We've had a lot of success helping people comply with NPDES, with Department of Labor. Let's work together, okay? Let's work together. If we're going, I said this in an advisory meeting, and I think I just blew somebody away because he accused me of looking at him. But I think some of you were there. But you know, let's take a look at these things and figure out a way to help people comply, to make money, to make their payroll. Does anybody in here ever have to make a payroll in their lives? If you had to write payroll checks, it's scary because my husband owned a small business before the crash, okay? And it's scary to watch your cash flow and to make sure that you can make payroll and the payroll taxes, okay? People are counting on you. Let's help those people with employees make that payroll. All right. Jobs. Here's a little bit of a perspective. Size and ranking of economies, okay? We are growing faster than a lot of the regions. We're growing faster than a lot of parts of California. And yes, logistics is still one of them. Would we like to diversify? Absolutely. We want to see those office jobs come back. All right? We're training in healthcare. We're training in manufacturing. We have, Department of Labor came out, we have a manufacturing training center at the old Kaiser Steel site. Have you heard of the old Kaiser Steel site that had to close after defense downsizing?
Yeah.
We went through, got a grant from Department of Labor, set up a manufacturing school. Department of Labor came out to do monitoring. I said, what can we do better? Please tell us, how can we make this better and make you happier? Because we want to keep this going. They said, we can't think of anything more that you can do. You have labor at the table, you have the businesses at the table, you have the right instructors, and you're full. So guess what? We're doing the right things and working together. So in your packet, I've left you wage data, okay, from all of the different, this is UCR, okay, their new Inland SoCal Forecast Center. If you need data, let me know, because we have a contract with them. We're happy to provide it. Okay, housing. We talk about jobs. Let's think about the housing. In my region, we did not have a housing recovery this time. We've always had a housing recovery. I went to our economist and said, where's the housing starts? Well, it turns out the FHA limit is too low in our region. Okay, so we were trying to get an FHA loan. Can't do it in my county. Okay, for a starter home, the limit's too low. So we're working with HUD on that. We're trying to get the limit raised. But guess what? We're going to have a housing crisis, aren't we? Have you already read about the housing crisis in Southern California?
Yeah.
Okay, let's help the housing industry recover. Okay, I know there's monitoring going on. Let's help them comply. Instead of beating people with a stick, okay, and saying, we caught you, say, we're going to get in trouble together if we don't fix this. Let me help you. Let's figure out ways to do it. You know, whether it's the ARB or the EPA or whoever it is who's providing incentives for things, okay, let's make sure that any incentives that are delivered, okay, that are available, that we help business connect with, that we help the housing construction companies find, that those incentives actually work. Because is that good public policy if we set aside all this money and nobody can use it? Or if they pull it down and then they have to pay it back? Lots of states do that. Let's not be one of those, okay? So, sorry, this is Joel Kotkin, by the way. He's a futurist, and this is where he's talking about the millennials and where they're gonna live. It's all well and good to talk about downtown LA and millennials living without kids in downtown LA, but you can imagine what happens when you start to have kids and your kids get a lot bigger, okay? Mine are all, 200 pounds and 6'1", a lot bigger than mom. Believe me, I don't want to be crammed in some townhouse or a condo. So Joel talks about housing affordability. We are the place for housing affordability. Of course, we're going to try and push more people into these urban nodes, okay, like the Ontario near the airport. Ontario and Rancho Cucamonga are working on really dense housing right now. Some of the neighbors are going crazy over it, but I think it's going to work because it's going to be walkable. It's going to make sense from an urban planning standpoint. So I think my message to you today is please, please, please comply so we don't get fined. But when you're making the rules, figure out how we can work together to communicate to business, okay, to residents, how to comply and address the poverty that we're all trying to overcome together. You hear about homelessness? We're working on it. You hear about education? We're working on it. I'm cutting my remarks a little bit shorter in the interest of time. You've been through a lot of very heady materials today, but I have data, I have websites, I can give you testimonials, I can introduce you to people. Some people, I promise you, will not talk to you. They're scared to death. Okay, even when we say, we're from the government, we're here to help, let us bring AQMP in, they're scared to death. Okay, because they're those little manufacturers where maybe they're not doing anything wrong, but they're afraid you're going to shut it down. They're absolutely afraid. And I can tell you, since 1992, I've interviewed thousands of businesses. The reason that I'm successful at what I do is because I get out of my office and I go talk to people. And my staff is required to go talk to people over and over and over again. All we hear is, we're overregulated, we're overregulated, you're killing us, okay? Let's help them. Okay. Thank you again, and thank you for all the time and effort you put into these meetings. It's a lot of work and a lot of grief sometimes, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any question for Mary Chan?
I guess I had one for Mary Jane. Does your agency have access to wage data?
Yes.
School-based loss data? Because they was telling us here that there's an absence of local data, regional data.
Oh my gosh.
And
yeah, we buy really good data.
I can't imagine that John Busing doesn't have to have it.
Oh yeah, we have multiple data sources, including John.
Because to wrap Southern California's economy against San Francisco.
Yeah, we are like two different states.
Sure.
We are, and I was born in the Bay Area, so.
So that might be a resource for the district. To,
absolutely, by all means. I have UCR, I have John Busing, I have Shimura, we just bought a new one, I can't think of the name of it, and they're really easy reports to run and analyze. I'm happy to help. We have a community indicators report that's published every year by the county, and it talks about public health. It talks about our incomes and whether we're making any progress or not. It's our report card to our community.
Because I know staff wants to get this right, so do we as a regulated entity. So let's do it right, scientifically and economically.
We're competing, I compete on an international scale, right? I'm looking for investment dollars from all over the world, but I'm also competing with the rest of the world. So I can't have a Fortune 100 corporate real estate executive lean over to me in a meeting and say, why'd you stay in California? Why didn't you get a job somewhere else? You're not going to be successful there. I mean, this is a telecom company where you can drive down to the corner and see one of their stores, okay? It's not good, gang. So, again, the other thing I can offer is I've got contacts at the highest levels in the Fortune 100 and the corporate real estate field. If you need to talk anecdotally, does this make sense? What do you guys think of this? I can get their opinion. I can get their feedback. So
we appreciate that.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Thank
make
you.
a quick comment on the poverty issue.
On the poverty?
Poverty, yeah. I think the poverty issue is mainly nationwide problem maybe. And when you look at the big picture, like, middle class are getting more shrinking, and 1% of population make 40% of total wealth. 1% of population have 50% worth of stocks, and this is national in a way. And if I put the number in perspective for you, if you put the cost of 5 AQMP together, you couldn't make a dent in poverty and education in Southern California, because you are economists, you always look at the big picture. Look at the big picture. And then if you're really passionate about the poverty, you should go after the big guys that, Wall Street and banks, So because you create a financial crisis, you hear about all these job losses and here and there.
Oh, you're talking about the B of A's of the world?
Yeah.
And
They are the one can decide whether
and the
they're
Lehmans
gonna
and all of that?
crash the stock or housing market tomorrow.
Okay, might we move the
public
conversation to the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
So just
I mean,
let me
that's
go
just
over
a
my
suggestion.
slides.
Sure. But just to respond quickly, we would be happy to be in lower middle class, not just poor.
That's
And
the
very
reason
high.
you see in this AQMP we are providing a lot of incentives. We are actually changing the whole course of AQMP. We create a lot of incentives to help businesses to actually exactly what you said.
Just don't make it so hard to comply that they throw up their hands and they say, forget it, I'm leaving.
All right, so I'm going to, after this interesting discussion, I'm going to follow up with some maybe a little bit more boring materials, I'm afraid. So it's about the employment impact of environmental regulations. We know there are a lot of talks out there that how environmental regulations might hurt the economy and then create job losses. So our idea is to go into academic research, looking at the existing economics literature finding, and see what's out there. So basically, how do economists do it? And they use empirical analysis using econometric techniques. So the trick is that they need to identify and build counterfactuals. So in real life, this might be hard. So for example, we know ABC Inc. has lost 50 employees. They fired 50 employees. And then at the same time, there's also additional environmental regulation imposed on this facility. So the question will be that, was ABC Inc. going to lay off 50 workers anyway, or because of the environmental regulations that they are doing this? And in real life, you don't really know. You can ask the manufacturer, and then they might tell you the real answer or a false answer. And that's why the economists, they look at a huge sample of firms in order to look at the data and try to distinguish whether there's a real effect, real causal relationship or not. And then when it's a really difficult and complex job to identify and build these plausible counterfactuals. But then when they manage to do that, they will use observed or survey data to detect if there's any real difference between the factual and counterfactual groups' behavior. So for example, they ask, would a similar firm in a similar business situation, yet not faced with similar regulations, still lay off 50 workers as well? So from this question, we will know if there's a real impact from environmental regulations. So there's actually one study that's done in our region that was done by Berman and Buell in 2001. They look at the effect of our region's ozone and NOx related regulations during the period 1979 to 1992. And so what they have found is that there's actually little employment impact at the regulated manufacturing plants. And they look at the first year of compliance and also the effects 5 years afterwards, and still they did not find much of an impact. And so they say, why? Why is this happening? So one reason could be that the manufacturing plants that they are looking at can be very capital intensive. So for example, petroleum manufacturers or refineries where they do not employ a lot of workers compared to their capital amount. And another plausible explanation is that we are actually regulating all the industries that are being affected by our regulations they are competitors with each other and they are faced with similar regulation. So at the end of the day, they all receive the similar impacts. And the third plausible explanation is that maybe there's an employment shift within the firm. So maybe there are fewer workers on the production of the final products, but then the jobs might be shifted to operate and maintain the pollution abatement equipment. And that's why on the net, you don't see a lot of impact. And then there's another study done by Morgenstern et al. So Morgenstern is Resources for the Future now. He's a senior fellow there. So the study was done in 2002. So basically, they used self-reported abatement spending during the period 1979 to 1991 at each surveyed plant across the nation. So it's a national study. And then they use this abatement spending as a proxy for environmental regulations. And they look at 4 specific industries: pulp and paper, plastics, petroleum, and steel manufacturing. And what they have found is that there's not really any relationship between abatement spending and the employment level at these plants that they look at. And then they say, well, there might be an explanation of the capital intensity that we just talked about. But then when they look at those relatively more labor-intensive industries, for example, pulp and paper, and then they say, well, there's still, they cannot detect a lot of relationship there either. And then, so during those years, the studies done in those years, so overall, they do not really find an impact. And then there's a third study done by Greenstone in 2002. So what he did is that he looked at employment in heavy polluting industries in attainment area versus non-attainment areas. So during the period of 1972 to 1987, similar periods than compared to those other studies that I just discussed. So what they have found is that when they look at the employment level across all the non-attainment counties and over the 15-year period that they study, so cumulatively, there are about 590,000 fewer jobs in heavy polluting industries. So those industries, they are more likely to be regulated. So there are lower job numbers compared to the attainment counties where they do not have to introduce stringent regulations like we have to. And then there are other metrics. They also show that there's a slowdown of growth of industrial activities among the heavy polluting industries. So from this study, we conclude that yes, there could be a negative impact. But then there's certain caveats mentioned in this study as well. So firstly, it does not capture any employment shifts, if there's any, to less polluting industries within the same counties. So overall, for the regional economy, it is possible that the employment impact is not really there. But if you look at the affected industries only, then there might be a negative impact. And then there's another study that's done recently. It's a theoretical model using computer simulation to look at this relationship. They say theoretically, the employment shift between different sectors, especially between heavy polluting and less polluting industries, that can be of significant magnitude that should be taken into account in the economy-wide study. And also, we cannot conclude whether slower growth was due to business relocation. So we don't know if the companies here that actually shut down and moved to another region, or it's mainly because the new business creation, they occurred more often in those attainment areas. Then at the same time, the study done by Kang and Manser in 2013, they do show that overall, employment in highly polluting manufacturing industries, they tend to concentrate more in attainment areas. But then again, we don't know if it's due to relocation or business creation. And the fourth study I want to mention to you is a regional study done by Curtis in 2014. So he looked at the NOx budget trading program in 19 states east of Mississippi. So what he had found is that because of the introduction of the program, the overall employment in the most energy-intensive manufacturing industries, compared to the least energy intensive manufacturing industries, the employment level dropped by about 3.9%. But then the decreased employment level was not exactly due to any layoff or job losses. It's mainly due to there's less hiring. So they tend to slow down their hiring or freeze their hiring. And then they also found that the new hires, they have lower wages than the incumbent workers. So in other words, is that the incumbent workers, they receive less of an impact due to these environmental regulations. But then there's a huge caveat that I want to mention to you is that in another study done by Walker at Berkeley, so what he have found that for those displaced workers, by the those workers who are displaced by the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments, and then the cost in terms of their foregone earnings can be large due to their job transition periods. So for example, compared to the earning losses and then to their 1990 level earning, 1990 earnings, it's about 20% of their annual earnings at that time. That constitutes the earning losses during the job transition periods. So what are the main takeaway points of all this study? So firstly is that potentially there could be negative employment impact on highly polluting industries. But then the impact, the magnitude of it will vary significantly from industry to industry. And then there are a lot of different factors that are in play. And also the negative employment impact is likely due to slowdown in hiring. So in other words, massive layoff that may be seen in press coverages and all those other kind of things, it's actually less likely to happen in real life. And in terms of economy-wide employment impact, they are likely to be more moderate than the impact that occur on the highly polluting industries. That's because there's employment shift from sectors subject to regulations, and then the employment will shift to less polluting sectors. But then at the same time, we need to consider that for those people who indeed lose their jobs because of environmental regulations, there could be substantial costs on those individuals that we need to keep in mind. And so that concludes my presentations. If there's any questions related to this presentation, Mary Jane's presentation, or all other presentations.
Elaine,
Yes.
question here on your first study, Berman and Beauty.
Right.
When your fourth bullet point, I guess, plausible explanations, is that your conclusion or their conclusion?
Their conclusions.
Their conclusion,
Right.
not yours.
It's in the paper.
Okay, because it was during that period of time, 79 to 92, when the Maquiladoras were created and companies were leaving Southern California in droves to go south of the border because of environmental regulations. That was also the time when Edison hired me for their electrotechnology programs, coatings, because as a generator of electricity at that time, we were seeing big voids, big valleys in power production because major manufacturers were leaving and the company couldn't backfill that with residential users, residential customers. So when you say plausible explanations, not only you, but the investigators, that's just flat wrong.
Well, so I think
Either glossed over it or that's an inconclusive study as far as I'm concerned.
so they did do phone interviews with manufacturers as well, trying to figure out like what kind of responses they usually have due to environmental regulations. And so from those phone interviews, it also informed their conclusions here. Of course, I cannot speak on behalf of the authors, but then regarding international economic shocks, so that impact is felt throughout the nation. It's not just California. So there are counterfactuals. There will be manufacturing plants in other parts of the country. They would have felt the same shock as well.
Anyone who was here would see economic development corporations from all over other states coming here to poach businesses.
Yeah. The governors of Florida and Texas have been here this year already. So, you know, I appreciate the two sides of the discussion, but the bottom line is, you know, if we're going to solve these problems, we need to do it together. And, you know, I don't want to argue about it. I want to work together. And so, you know, it's why I get up in the morning to solve the problem with poverty. I need to know a little more about what you were saying about hitting the big guys. I don't know what we need to get out of them, but, you know, unless it's extracting money for more incentives. And again, from a public policy standpoint, incentives are icing on the cake, but they do not make the site selection decision. Site selection decisions are made on the base level things that I showed you, such as infrastructure and workforce. So the infrastructure is the transportation, and the workforce is the quality and the quantity of the workforce. So, you know, rather than being in this constant cycle of arguing with each other, let's come together, because I'll tell you what, I'm not kidding you. A Utah legislator looked me in the eye and said, my best economic development policy is your legislature.
Yeah, it's probably true.
So, yeah, we appreciate your comments, and we also think that we should work together. And then, as we discussed during the business case working group meetings, for example, trainings needs to be done in order to get the drivers more acquainted with the new types of electric vehicles and also other trucks. So we're open to any discussion.
I remember driving an Edison vehicle in like 90, electric vehicle in 90, dating myself one or two. Doing something.
Elaine, I have a question. Yeah, with respect to these studies, it appears that you have a regional, a nationwide, you have regional and nationwide studies. How did you, with respect to the first study, South Coast Air Quality Management District study, Permanent 3, were there other studies available that you looked at? I mean, why was this particular study chosen? I'm assuming that there has to be other studies besides the Permanent 3 study.
So for our region, this is the only study that I'm aware of. And actually, overall, there are not that many studies on this topic. Is because, as I mentioned before, it's really difficult and very complex in order to identify and build the valid counterfactuals. So all these studies,
I assume so, but I was just wondering if there were other studies and why this particular study was chosen. But what you're saying is that because of the complicated nature of this type of study, this is the only one that you had available.
I was able to identify. And then I also want to emphasize that all these studies, they are published in highly regarded peer-reviewed journal.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm not questioning that. I'm just questioning why that particular study was chosen and gave me the answer. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But there's no doubt that the smokestack industries have largely disappeared from the greater LA basin over the years.
From the state, and you know, that's fine. I don't mind clean manufacturing is a good thing,
but those are the source though of good paying jobs have been historically the $50,000 a year jobs. But I think the other thing that I hear, and I understand where you're coming from, because I get out a lot. I get out a lot, talk to a lot of people, been here a long time, is the price of housing is a killer here in California. And I think that is, you know, I worked at Edison for 37 years, and people always said when they came in, geez, you know, how do I afford this? You know, $500,000 now in LA to buy a starter home.
That's right.
You know, and I mean, it's ridiculous.
2 bed, 1 bath.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think this is just as big a deterrent for why people are leaving and going elsewhere, because where you can buy a nice home for $150,000 in many parts of this country, and here you have to pay, 4 times as much. I think that is another big problem. In other words, what I'm saying is, if you drop the price of housing to $150,000, it would make a huge difference everywhere. And
And you
I
talk to
think
the
you'd see
housing
that.
developers and.
And so, and the reason for this, of course, well, the reason for this is because we got too many people for the amount of land that is there. And that's simple. And we've just built ourselves out. And so I think both those things contribute. Both the housing is a huge issue, and also I think the problem with regulations is that when I talk to these people, it's something they're scared about because they don't understand it. It's complex. I mean, I go through all this stuff. It's very complex, and these people just want to operate a simple business, and they don't want this huge layer of having to with all this regulatory stuff put on them, and that's a scary thing. And even though the AQMD tries to reach out to various people, I'm sure they do that. They have these programs and so on. It's very difficult because these people are not trained to think that way. They say, well, why do I have to put up with this? I'm going to go to a place where I can get a nice home for $150,000. I don't have to worry about the regulations. I mean, we just went to New Orleans, and I mean, along the Mississippi River, you have all this massive polluting stuff there, and it's an entirely different environment than this here.
So, Rob,
And
thank
so-
you.
So what I'm saying is, I think there are a lot of factors, but the problem is, and now we see it in the SJV, the San Joaquin Valley. We're the breadbasket for the U.S., right? And they got the worst pollution problem probably in the nation, even now worse than we do here, if that's possible, particularly in the winter. So they're really grappling with that too. How to keep the farm business going, right? At the same time meet the regulations. You think we got a big problem here. They got a huge problem there. So it's just the fact that we live in a basin that's polluted, and we have to, we don't make the regulations. The regulations, I mean, AQMP doesn't make the regulations. The regulations are made by EPA.
That's what
And so those are the people you got to go talk to and say, hey, if you feel this way, say, hey, you're killing the state for us, and you're over regulating us, and so on, because that's where the regulations are coming from. They're just.
So Rob, thank you for your comments, and then I believe that there are more people who have questions, so maybe we can discuss afterwards on this topic. Peter, do you have a question or
I'm
comment?
curious, and I think you're going to discuss this impact of regulation on employment in your AQMP. And is that going to be based upon these 4 studies that we saw today?
So we will be discussing different perspectives, but then it's not going to be a major part of the socioeconomic report, right? So the major report is really about costs and benefits.
But it's going to be based on these 4 studies, what you put in there.
It can be just, if you have other studies that you would like to provide us with, then we'll be more than happy to review them.
He's asking about the.
Are you talking about the
benefits
benefit or talking about the?
Are you talking about the literature or the?
Yeah, this is the, this employment impact aspect.
No.
No.
Not our analysis.
Is this not talking about
This relates to Dr. Keegan's study? Is that what you said?
Right, so we will be qualitatively discussing the undertaking study. So it's the health effects of unemployment. We're going to have that there, and then briefly discuss other related literature as well. So it's not going to be a major part of this analysis. The major part of analysis is really about the cost benefits and also the job impact that will be estimating from RAMI, the model. Please.
You have another meeting scheduled tentatively, or just something you got
Yeah.
here?
So it will probably be sometime in September, but then for the exact date, we need to do the announcement later.
I'm going to try to talk briefly because I know you're in a hurry. Start saying that I have a business designing and engineering work and the chemical and mechanical side of things for process work. And I started out with AQMP in 1956. And I got to know about 20 engineers and about 30 environmental enforcement people. Because I worked at a plant in Santa Fe Springs and we did have troubles. And the boss didn't want to talk to you people because we had a permit, he insisted on using it, but we were really polluting the area. It took time. I worked with those engineers and I really respect them. And I know they're doing a tough job here, trying to keep going. But we did work out the incineration problem and worked out a lot of other problems. But I want to say that that company is not there anymore. They wound up having to raise the wages on their employees, but they couldn't pay an engineer more, so I left with aerospace. That company doesn't exist. I went aerospace. 2 companies were bought by an Eastern engineering firm, divisions I should say, in Gardena. They both shut down. Then I went to work for an engineering firm. They were doing work for local energy companies, the oil industry. That engineering company shut down and left. I had a chance to work for CF Braun, a major engineering company. That company is gone. So there is a lot. Oh, then I went to work for a company in Pasadena. And we built a lot of geothermal power plants, not only California, but Western states, Indonesia, Philippines, China, worldwide. It was bought by a company in Kansas. Company in Pasadena shut down. It's gone. So this lady said, companies are leaving. I watched them leave. And they left for various reasons. And it's going to be hard to find out why they left. It will be hard for you to do that. All right. I got interested in this because I live near Rose Hills and the 605 freeway. I have pollution at my house from the freeway, low diesel trucks. Across the freeway is the railroad. Those diesels run by. And on top of that, above us is the approach to LAX. And I found out that pollution from airplanes produces very small particles, not 2,500 nanometers, but 10 to 100 nanometers, very small particles. But I wipe the counter in my kitchen and the white paper towel turns black. Things have changed because now instead of flying in with power on or flaps down, they glide in and the approach is farther south. There's not as much dirt on the floor. I mop the floor, the water turns black. There's a lot of black stuff in the air. But you're not going anywhere near the 2.5, with 2.5 to solve my problem. In searching, I came across a fellow who is working on this, and his name happens to be Enstrom. Just met him a couple of weeks ago. He called me this morning, said he would like to be here to talk about the reports that you use to demonstrate the impact of mortality and morbidity. We've lived in our house now for 50 years. My wife is one of these people that never forgets anything. So we went down the list of people that we know who have been in their 80s and died. And did they really die of something from air pollution, particulates? It's reassuring we couldn't find a one. About 40 people, 20 of them still living there in their 80s. Now one has had a problem with air pollution and emphysema or the other things you listed, killing people. So I became a little bit more relaxed. I was really worried that, like my wife says, I'm not afraid to die, but I'm afraid of what the doctor will do to me before I die.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't find anybody. I went to a hospital because of emphysema. We have neighbors with 3 small children. They have not lost a day of schoolwork because of a problem with emphysema or asthma or other things. Okay, this is a tough problem, but that led me into another tough problem that I'm working on, even more than this now that I'm more relaxed, and that is the overall money we're spending on global warming, which changed from global warming to climate change, and it will probably change some more. And then I found out, as I studied all this, that they're missing some very basic concepts. Interpreting them wrong. I'm not going to go into that, but I'm gonna write a book called Polar Bears in the Hot Tub.
Oh,
And
that's good.
really, there are 25,000 polar bears now, and they're not having any problem. So I'd like to somehow find a way to continue my talking with you people, to find out where your information is coming from and to understand it. I don't know very much about Dr. Enstrom. I've only talked to him maybe an hour. And that's not enough to know what he knows or how, or if what he knows is important. But I'm going to find out. And I would like to talk to you probably afterward about some of the concerns I have, and not take up everybody's time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from over the phone?
Still there?
Yeah. Steve, Jane,
Over here.
Billy, and Mallory. Any
Yeah.
comments that you guys would like to make?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to make sure this is a fantastic session, by the way. Very good information.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you. All right, so that concludes our meeting today, and then the staff will be here if you have any other questions that you would like to discuss with us. Thank you.
Okay.
I have some
Thank
things
you.
here.
Thank you.
Sure.
The lawnmower situation. Going electric eventually, you know, with all the lawn equipment. What I see as the problem with that is the blow and mow guys who do a lot of the work now in the LA Basin. They're out there all day and they run gas powered stuff because you think it's easy, right? They're not going to do electric. They're not going to do electric plugging. You're not going to have electric cord. So the idea, I guess, is going to go electric for these type of guys. Just have battery powered electric hedge trimmers, weed whackers, lawnmowers.
The district does a program for exchange on
right? But how well is it doing? How well is it doing with the? Is it attracting the blow and mow guys who are out there all day, every day? I don't see how they can do
I
this.
think they do full exchanges on like the programs, needed a pre-pay exchange, all of
Those are just big waste of time.
as far as I know.
Are they actually producing? This is just more for the homeowner. A few of us who still mow our lawns.
Yeah, I don't know the statistics on this. I know there's like a limit on the number they can exchange.
I have never, we have blow and mow guys in our neighborhood, you know, who doesn't, right? But I've never seen a blow and mow guy with any electric stuff at all. Never. So I'm thinking maybe for the home, you know, for some of these homeowners. Okay, that's one thing.
I know.
But I mean, I think it's a good idea.
Our mobile source.
It's a good idea because obviously I think it's a source of pollution. I mean, taking care of, you know, I mean, the blown guys, I mean, all of us, you know, have a lot of garbage that doesn't pollute. Okay, another thing is this business of solar charging.
It's from the vendors.
Well, this is the one where advanced clean cars and so on. Advancement clean cars. Okay.
Shaw kind of has more details on that than I do.
Where is he? Shaw.
I'm trying to bring it up.
Rob, we have a question on one of the measures.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, I was talking about the solar charging of cars, you know, as we gravitate toward more electric vehicles. which I think is great, right? I mean, now,
And then,
did all this charging, because the charging, all these batteries, it takes a lot of power. Has that charging been taken into account, the energy you don't use, and where's all this gonna come from?
Yes, in an ARV model, it does.
It does?
Yeah, they have included the charging station infrastructure.
so what are you thinking about going after the big guys?
Okay, now, just.
What are your thoughts?
You know, I thought we were going to, Elaine, I thought we were going to come back, because it's not 5:30 yet, and discuss, because you said no questions at the beginning, so I had some things I wanted to discuss.
Oh, so I thought, because I was asking if there was any questions.
Yeah, I had some things I wanted to discuss at the end.
Yeah, sorry about it. I thought I made it clear that any questions are welcome on any of the previous presentations.
Yeah, you said let's do it at the end.
Right.
So I took my notes and
Okay. Yeah, so like Shaw and me and I just had to
trying to discuss this already, yeah.
Sure. So Shaw will be here.
Yeah. Because I thought, you know, we had till 4:30, I mean 5:30.
No, actually 1:30 to 4.
Oh, was it 4? Why did I see?
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay, I know why. Because the sign out there said 1:30 to 5:30. You just had the room to 5:30.
Oh, really? Yeah, we have the room until 5:30, but
That's
essentially. So on the notice we say until 4.
I'll discuss it with them. Some other things that I
Okay.
But you know, whether it's true or not, and there's always a lot of things that aren't true, but the story on the street is, just like this lady said, whether it's true or not, and the way people are thinking, okay, is that, yeah, regulations are a killer. You hear it all the time, I'm sure.
We hear it all the time, and then we know different people have different perceptions, different evidence, and we accept that.
That's right.
Yeah, so
It's
I
just
think, like Americans say, right, the important thing is to work together.
It's just like now they say Hillary's corrupt. Corrupt Hillary, right? Okay, well, that's what Trump wants you to think, right? Hillary's corrupt. Corrupt Hillary. I mean, it's a perception, and things get started. It's the same thing with this. Regulations kill. Regulations kill. But I'm not so sure it's the regulations itself. I think they're scared of regulations. Because these people, these smaller businesses, they're not into regulations, right? And they want to start a business, whatever it is. The last thing they need is somebody who's going to be and they're just scared, I think. And then you guys do an outreach, and then you have all that. A lot of money, a lot of time, outreach, and number. But I think that's what it is. And that's
If you
just.
have any recommendation, make us look less scary, that would be great.
Well, yeah, I think the things to do is to have is. I think the things to do is how to these small businesses how do they communicate, okay? You know, ask somebody like Bill who represents small business, what is the best way to reach the masses of small businesses here? To educate them to say, hey, we're not the big bad monster. We're here to help you.
We do work with trade associations. So, for example, with Bill, he was offering to reach out to his members.
So why do we still have this problem?
I don't know. We were trying.
I think some of it is because we keep having to put on more and more stringent, because of the more stringent regulations. That's the problem. It's not a static target. It's a dynamic moving target, right? And so all you hear about is, oh boy, every 3 years we're going to get killed. And I think that's the problem. In other words, we said for years, geez, if we get this ozone down to 120 parts per billion. We're great, right? We're free, we're clear. That was the big thing, right? The ozone. And now you say, oh, that's just the beginning. And see, that's another thing. EPA stays out of the fray. They won't stick their heads out here and say, hey, we're the ones who are doing it. Because you guys really are only the implementation of their policy.
Yeah, so.
Trying to reach their goals.
And sure, and we understand that because that's our business understands. But the common person doesn't understand that. They think it's just like Edison when I worked there. Oh, geez, you hear it all the time. The big bad utility charging you a lot of money for your electricity. Go solar, right? There's nothing to do with it. It's the PUC who sets the rate. Okay, so it's the same thing here. It's the same type of thing. AQMP is the big bad monsters. And that's the type of thing. So you say, what do you do? That's the type of thing you say, hey, we're just implementing policies that's been given to us. We have no choice. And so we're trying to make it as comfortable as possible on you guys. That's the approach. And unfortunately, they keep clamping down on the standards, right? People don't understand that. But in reality, that's what's happening. And now these standards are becoming so stringent, the whole basin might as well move out. Because 70 parts per billion is almost background. Worldwide global background.
Because it's much easier.
And so, see what I'm saying? And so, really what you should say to these people is, yeah, we know these regulations are tough.
Is looking for.
Why don't you go to EPA and talk to them?
I think that's what we've been trying to say
But they're taking that
as well. But then, of course, I think if you would like to reach out to like different government agencies, US EPA is really the biggest target or biggest guy that you have to go after.
Well, EPA has an email address. And they start getting millions of people after them. Millions and millions of people after them saying, hey, this is enough. We can't do this because this is putting us out of business with globalization.
Right. So Rob, let's also look at the whole population and then different kinds of residents living here, right? Some of them, they do not want more regulation, but then other people, for example, environmental groups, they would actually like to have more stringent regulations as well.
That's right.
So we have to respect different opinions.
So you're absolutely right. But and people need to understand that, and I'm sure they do.
This idea seriously.
You're caught in the middle because you're just looking at you have to say, hey, there's this big argument between more and more regulations and people who say enough is enough. It's like the NRA and the whole gun thing, right? The NRA says, hey, we need lots of guns. And in fact, every time there's a shooting, people run out and buy more guns because they think somehow that's going to protect them from the terrorists, which is crazy thinking, but that's what they think. Okay, and it makes them feel good to carry a gun, right? It's not going to help them, but we know that. Okay, so I got to talk to these two guys. Yeah, we didn't finish.
Methanol.
Yes, sir.
But so I'm just saying.
It's right now, the spot market price of methanol is at about 80 cents a gallon.
Okay, so anyway, so on the solar charging, okay, so that's taken into account, right?
Diesel for the advanced.
Yeah,
I can verify ARV stuff because they were online. We are going to go over more detail
because it turns out I have a buddy of mine now who works for JD Power, very knowledgeable about. He just got a Volt. Volt car, which he says he knows all about cars. He says that's the best car out there right now.
You have it for 2 years.
You have it? You have a Volt? Yeah, he says it's the best car.
plug-in hybrid?
Yeah, but the reason it's so great is because it's low internal combustion engine in Mississippi Delta. It's all electric.
You're talking about the Volt,
VOLT.
VOLT has an
Regulations are.
No, it has an all.
The new one has.
The new one has an electric motor.
That's a Volt. That's a VOLT.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Right, made by GM. Yeah, okay. And so my buddy says that's the way to go because the electric motors last forever. And he says they just run with gasoline. No maintenance. No maintenance. And they're
last week.
totally
He
non-polluting.
has
You
information
know, all you've got
that
is a little bit of fuel feeding into them, and the electric motor, there's nothing.
And he asked me
It's
if-
incredible.
Yeah.
So, but he says, but the thing is, what blew his mind, he just got some solar panels out. He says, wow, to charge these batteries, it takes a lot of voltage to recharge the battery. So I'm just wondering, a lot of voltage.
So Dr. Enstrom
I think
has
there's
a lot of
different
kV.
types of batteries,
It's a
right?
difference. You have a fast charge.
Yeah, that's right.
Fast charge, you get to 4 hours.
So,
Yeah,
with respect
a
to
lot of
linear
kilowatts.
knowledge is coming like
Yeah,
But that's okay, most of the houses now they have a
Well,
solar
following the
system,
mainstream.
so the solar
That's
people.
recommended by our
only if we have solar
contractor, and also
panels.
it's a
You, 1
standard
million,
practice.
1 million
How
in
many?
California, 1 million.
1 million have solar panels?
Which is.
And they often in
Just
our
one quick
incentives.
thing, so on the
Everybody
fuel
goes
cell
to
side.
solar.
Well, that's
Fuel cell
different. Our
technology.
neighborhood, I guess, is behind the times.
It is, just check this.
Nobody in
I
West
don't have a
Virginia.
house, so I don't.
Nobody in West Virginia has solar.
A lot of the schools have that.
They're very
You look at their
interested.
background,
Warehouses,
what
they
they have
have a
done.
lot of.
Yeah, you can
So
see
they
the big
have
box
a lot of
stores
contractual-
too.
Big box stores,
contractual
they have Costco.
work
has
with
loads
No,
of-
so I think that's good. So,
And,
so
And
that,
also we look at the
that all
resume of
those,
their own employees,
So-
and also their advisors,
so,
so
but
that all
for
will
the
know.
home guy,
And
so,
then,
for
so,
the
and
home
then we
guy
also have
arrested,
other.
I mean, I'm talking now about the autos, right?
Yeah.
And then we
My-
compare.
So for the autos, they have to,
They are-
evidently
So
it takes a
our
lot of
regulation
KVs to
panel
charge
for
those
the
batteries.
Tailpipe.
So usually
Methanol.
they charge
So
up
you
overnight,
employees.
and it
We
costs
also
them
have
$1
other
a day
sister agency employees
for
who
charging.
are familiar
And it
with
goes,
this issue to
yeah,
look
if you're
at
talking
it.
about both, it goes 40 miles
So
electric
at
and
the end, we
That's
show
probably the
this
next step.
contractor
gas.
who is really
Yeah, that's right,
experienced
yeah.
and
And then,
business for-
everybody loves it, you know, even if I don't have a solar, because I have a lot of trees, my house is not qualified for solar, but it costs me almost nothing, and then, the maintenance is amazing, you know, you go to oil change every
So
12,000 miles,
actually,
so every
can I help you
year,
with
I guess-
you need a small oil change, that's it.
What do you change your oil
I
on?
mean, for the, because the boat is a dual and plug-in, plug-in.
So
The
it's
boat, I'm
not-
talking about the boat,
The
B-O-L-T.
boat, you don't
So
need
I
anything.
You don't need anything.
That's not out yet,
To
this
the
is
materials
it's
that
coming
we
out
want
this
to
year,
or something.
2017.
Yeah, so that includes the
Yeah, my
dry
buddy got the
memos
bolt.
that were prepared by.
The
I'm not
electric
sure he
motor.
has it because.
No, he has it
So
already.
those
Yeah,
memos,
it's
they
electric
include other
Because June, they
recommendations and
said,
the justification of
June
the
of next year is coming up.
Okay.
Well, he just got it with the electric motor, but it still is, it still has, for the fuel to run the electric motor is gas.
That's the volt, VOLT.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's still a
Everybody
combustion.
knows.
That's a
Oh, yeah,
combustion.
right, right,
Yeah, so
but
you
it's,
need to
but,
do oil
but
on
it's,
Wait a minute.
but it's an electric motor, see? It's not a, it's not an engine, it's not a combustion engine.
No, it is a combustion engine.
Yeah, it has
turns
dual
a gen-
engine.
And it runs a generator for the
With
battery.
a combustion engine, you can go 300 miles, electric give you 40 miles. So you can go 350 miles.
On the way, that
And it takes 9 gallons of gas.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I have it for 3 years, so I mean, I know.
Oh, you have the
and
Bolt?
that's why I've gotten into this.
It's very good, you know, it looks very, you know, kind
knows,
of
but
sporty, the kids love it, the,
I wish I
you
could
know,
quickly say
the
that
generation guys, they love it,
if they
acceleration is
we're
beautiful,
full.
almost zero maintenance, you just have to
That
go
little
for
area,
tire
1%
rotation.
of the world
And,
is raised,
yeah,
temperature's gone up.
every night you
Mine-
charge it, you go 40 miles
Compared
free.
to the,
When you run out
last 50 years.
of mileage, electric, it
Going
automatically
over there,
turns
if
to
the CO2 is
gas.
causing
Well, I
it
hear the
to
more you
cause
stop,
it
the
can't
longer
be.
the battery lasts.
Yeah, because you have a regenerative
Charges that.
brake, there's
So-
a generator for the brake.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So in LA, that's all it is gridlock,
Right.
so it seems to me you should
Right.
never have to get gas.
Yeah, when you go to the, I go to traffic, you go to 405 freeway,
Yeah.
you just keep charging. Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing was that I made a note on here
West Coast,
was,
there's
has there been talk about changing
Pacific, the Ring of Fire,
the
and now they're starting to see some reports.
Metrolink
There's a volcano
to
there
electric?
that's heating up underneath the ice.
Which, in the
You know, now as you know, the trolleys, right, are all electric, right?
Yeah.
But the Metrolink is still diesel.
I look at that and say.
I think maybe it's a clean diesel, I'm not sure.
Well, who knows?
So, I'm
I
gonna
mean,
look
it's
at
still,
this
I'm sure it's putting stuff
and
out.
I don't. I'm not
Okay, we can make a note and ask
accepting
them.
But I'm just wondering if they're planning to electrify the railroads.
Right.
Because you know, back east, that's all
We
electric.
can provide however materials that we have
Back
to
east,
review,
all the
and
commuter
then
trains are
we can
electric.
make a judgment.
Yes, We'll let
I
you
know
know.
inside the city, like a gold mine, and all those are all.
Well, that's electric, those are the trolleys.
Those are trolleys.
Those are the trolleys, those go about 40 miles an
Continue
hour.
this
Yeah,
good
those are-
relation
I'm
we had
talking
with
about the
AQMD way back in the
trains.
fifties and sixties.
They're all,
Yeah.
including the Amtrak that
Power
runs
plants,
through
we had to
here.
get-
I mean, why not
Yeah.
electrify the
At the time, it was
line?
still
So
APC,
So that's
right?
part of,
At the time,
What
it was
is it?
located in
Isn't that-
downtown,
That's
and
mobile
then it was
four-
not AQMD
11
yet. It was,
or
I thought it was
14.
by Los Angeles APC.
And they're trying to,
14, moving 14.
And they changed to
They
AQMD.
tried to
emission
get
locomotives, right?
low emission, yeah.
And I went,
Tier 5
One of the
locomotives.
only aircraft.
Tier 5s are, maybe
yeah, they
tier
don't
5s
have a
are
good
electric,
record
I
on
don't
companies
know.
because
Yeah, I'm not sure.
usually
I think
well,
they're
one of them
probably still diesel.
Yeah, but
shut
but
down while
they
I
all
was there,
have
and
to
I was
do
the
the
last
clean
employee because we couldn't
Yeah.
find work
And,
that we could make money at.
So I think there's
In
incentives
Berlin.
for those
They were
types of
cool.
locomotives.
Okay, so
Couldn't
then I
find
had
anything
another,
manufactured. So it shut down. But the other, the
this is-
engineering companies and whatnot, I just saw them
This-
going out of
this
business
is-
and saying, well,
this is, Brad, I thought this was interesting, where you
computer
talk
work.
about preliminary health benefits.
I asked him, well, what,
So we
why
do
are we
What this
going
gentleman
overseas
brought up,
to India?
you know, and
Speaking
Gene
well,
Hospital
they speak
ran the
English.
MATES programs.
They
Seems to me
They can program,
that
Right.
and 10%
in this
cost.
basin, for the most part, we still got the general asthmatic
So what do you do?
population, which I've always said it would be
What
cheaper
do
to
you do
give
if you're a
them,
business owner, right?
Yes.
an
You go
asthma,
out of business.
cheaper to give those people
You move out or go out of business.
an oxygen
Yes.
bottle with
Yeah.
a mask and wear it all the time.
You have the
Right, all the
practice
billions
here,
we're
but then you
spending
have a
on
subsidiary
clean air,
there.
because these people have to
Yeah.
have perfectly clean air.
That's
It's
the business
amazing,
world.
you know, the asthma people do.
And,
But anyway,
one of the things that
what I'm thinking here
the
is
son of mine, he
that
grew up in
where
Algeria.
we're having the
He
problems
went
is
to
these
Japan,
hot
he learned
spots.
that-
The basin now is
that,
pretty clean.
He was working for
The basin as a whole,
Okay.
away from these hot spots, is really pretty clean. You don't hear people anymore, you know, talking about can't breathe because the high ozone, have watery eyes
They said
because
they
of
couldn't
the
use the
peroxide
Japanese language.
nitrates, right?
Okay.
You know, all that type of stuff.
He
You don't
worked
hear
there for
about
another
that
reason, he
anymore.
said, sure, it can be done. Came back,
But you do hear
Yeah,
about,
spent
and
2
you
years
read the
and 5
articles
years
about
actually in
people
Japan.
living near
putting the language on there, so
hot
Japanese
spots,
input
near
protocol.
freeways, right next to freeways.
Israeli
Or the battery charging plant, right? You know, what is their name?
That's Excite.
Excite, right? Yeah, yeah. You know, those types of things. There are some bad, there are quote, some bad actors out there. And I think that those are the, along with our roadways, I think particularly the freeways, they carry so much traffic. And they stop and go, that doesn't help either. I think those are the areas, and now they're building walls, and maybe that's good, but maybe it isn't. Because now maybe the
They were
people on
actually
the.
at a seminar about that from EPA the other day, and they're talking about, yeah, that it can help because, you know, different buildings that are near the
So there's a
roadway
shift
actually
of
can
the
dilute it by
structure.
raising the altitude
Global
of the
trend, there are a lot of
emission, so
things that,
it goes up
like,
over the high wall, and
Yeah.
it's not as concentrated. and-
Yeah, underground.
Yeah, so I know EPA is looking at that kind of stuff.
So of course now, of course, with all the walls in the freeway, when you just stopped idling now and you have your window open, which some people still do, now you're breathing all
over the
that
past
stuff on the
one
freeway.
decade, we can see that employment.
Yeah.
Even more concentrated because
The
it's
share of the total.
Well, it's interesting
boxed in,
actually.
it's boxed in by the high walls, right?
Well, it's interesting, so I mean, just from what I know from the webinar, actually, the, one of the researchers, she was saying
How do you
that
reverse
because
the
of all the
trend,
turbulence
and
on the
then
road,
how
because of
much
the
money do you
cars
want to
moving and
spend
whatnot,
to
is
reverse the
actually,
trend?
somewhat dilutes that as well, so they
Yeah.
weren't,
But a lot of
saying, they weren't
times,
saying that it got really concentrated.
but a lot of times they
Probably
don't
not.
move.
Yeah.
We know, right?
Yeah, that's
They
it,
just,
right.
they're just stopped.
It's possible.
Much
that
of
we
the
have
time
to
they're
live
just
with
stopped.
that employment trend,
So
right?
I'm just
Right?
wondering,
Just-
I mean,
we
have
hope that
we
will
actually
level
done,
off.
we've done
They're
near
not going down
roadway
further. Yeah.
monitoring. It's pretty high.
One thing I found was a big.
Have we actually put a monitor out in the median of a freeway, right in the center divider, and monitored the stuff? The NOx, you know, the NOx, the hydrocarbons, the soot, you know, all that stuff that comes out of cars. Has that ever been done?
I think it's been done very close to freeway, but in the middle of the center,
But in the center,
I don't.
I know, well, we remember we did that stuff with you guys. We have that site still down there at Long Beach Boulevard, just off the 710. That's only about 15 feet away, right? You know, that whole study. But there's quite a difference between, even dilution is very
Well,
fast.
Yeah, right.
I know. We
So
have to-
right in the
yeah.
middle of the freeway, has that been done?
Yeah, I can check on that for you, yeah.
I mean, that,
I
I
think
think,
there's some limitation because of the, how do they put that monitor, how do they keep it, that doesn't create distraction or accident.
well, there's already so much distraction, I mean, I'm not
So
freeway.
those big advertising blocks
Yeah,
and stuff
right.
like that. But you want it in the middle, not even
Put it on the median, in the middle.
in the
So it's
middle,
picking up-
center, in the center.
Yeah, the center divider, so that it's picking up traffic both ways. Monitoring system.
That's a question for our
In,
sources.
in, in our heavily traveled freeways, right? Somewhere there.
Yeah, 405.
405,
405,
yeah, yeah.
710.
Because there are some center dividers that are pretty wide. And actually what you could do is, now people wouldn't like this, I say you close the HOV lane for a while, but then people would shoot you. People would shoot you, right?
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
But there must be some places where there are some places where you have a little leeway there.
Yeah, definitely. I asked that in my.
But I'm thinking that one of the things we don't get enough credit for, we have these hot spots, and it's the hot spots now that are making more of the news than the general.
All right, Robert, see you later.
Okay, Anthony, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The hot spots are making more of the news now in terms of the pollution problems.
Give me a little bit of it,
That's okay. I can carry it. Yeah.
I can use it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Okay,
Yeah,
when's our next get together?
Yeah, it's middle of September.
It will be September, but we don't know yet.
So, how's the reaction been toward this, beside a lot of grousing?
It's mainly to AQMP, the main report, right, that went out. So environments, they are not very happy because of the
Because,
incentives.
Because incentive, because
Right.
they are thinking that you're shifting the cost from businesses to people
To
and
taxpayers.
to taxpayers. Because incentive money is coming from somewhere.
oh, they want to shift it back to businesses?
And they're saying
They
that.
do not want the taxpayers to bear the cost
Yeah.
of better air.
They'd rather have businesses pay the cost? That's an interesting question. So then the response is, well, we're losing businesses because they gotta pay already so much. Well, spread, I think, actually, if it is the taxpayer, then I imagine the cost isn't much because with so many people involved, it's spread, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's spread out
And
more,
also,
isn't
if
it?
the money comes from federal, then it's not gonna be imposed by the local taxpayer.
So I've got to run upstairs.
Bye.
Because she has another meeting. Go ahead, catch.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, you see what happened if the money comes from the
the
federal,
feds,
because
right.
right now we are asking the Congress for money. If you are asking Congress about the clean air investment fund,
Yeah.
if the money comes from federal, it's just they write a check to give it to us. That doesn't have any opportunity cost because it's a free check. It's like you found $1,000.
Right,
on the
sure,
road.
sure. Yeah.
So that doesn't have any impact. So we are hoping to get as much as possible from the federal, not impacting the pool of existing funds.
Yeah, you think they'll,
Because right here is like you're robbing Peter and paying
sure,
Paul.
that's right, yeah.
So here, that's what we're, in my presentation I was saying that we need to include the incentives as part of the total cost to account for societal costs. Because those monies, they have opportunity cost. They could have been spent somewhere else.
Yeah.
Not being spent. So this is kind of a technical thing that we need to incorporate in our, document. But overall, that's a common feeling that we don't get too much opposition from businesses because there are a lot of incentives. But at the same time, enviros are concerned about the fact that where the money is coming, whether the money is enough, how do we guarantee the source of funds, and those are kind of plausible questions.
Well, those are legitimate questions,
Yeah,
yes.
which, we don't have a solid answer, usually upper management responds.
Right, well, that's to be worked out.
Yeah.
But is Congress, sympathetic toward these requests?
They had few trips. Our executive officer as well as the top management went to Washington DC and a couple of board members. So they are hoping to get some money. And as you said, in your response to Mary Jane, that is the EPA putting all their standards. So giving us the money, give us the money.
Yeah.
I mean, how can we do it? We cannot squeeze businesses, and they have a right, but what can you do? I mean, and 80% are from mobile sources, NOxes. Even if you shut down every single facility in the basin, still we cannot comply with EPA. Because 80% are from mobile sources. We don't have an authority on mobile sources.
That's right.
So what to do? EPA either relax their standard, like Bill Lamar and all the small business.
Yeah.
Those guys, they have to appeal to EPA. They have to go down and say, hey, give this guy a break,
Yes. No, that's right.
They want to change from 80 to 75 pp. So 75 to 70 pp on the phone. How can you even reach 75?
No,
with all
70,
this
I think
problem?
70 is above background sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, what
I'm not going to make that. That's ridiculous.
They keep pushing without
I know.
considering the fact that we can do it.
I know.
And we are in between rock and a hard place. Business are saying that, oh, you're killing me, Larry. EPA is saying that if you don't pass those, we're putting sanction on you.
Sure.
So what the heck are we supposed to do?
And meanwhile, we've been back to EPA talking to them more about research. But where do they live at RTP, where the air is clean? They live out in the country. They don't have a local pollution problem there.
Yeah.
They don't even know what that's about.
Exactly.
Really? Have you been to EPA?
No, but I know
Well,
around it. Yeah. It's,
okay. They live literally. That EPA office is out in the country. Literally out in the country. It's in a bunch among the trees. It's off some road somewhere. It's out in the boondocks. Nobody knows where it is, which is exactly what they want. They don't have any signs on their exits. Freeways exits say
Middle of
EPA.
nowhere.
It's really, they want not to be known. And really, they got a building out in the middle of a forest. They cut some trees down. They put the building up there several years ago. It was a nice place. But I mean, they don't have a pollution problem other than regional haze back east. They don't have a local pollution problem, so they can pass anything they want.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, I'm sure if they lived in a place like LA, I'm sure there'd be a different mentality there.
Yeah, definitely. They have to feed it themselves.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's worth a lot, right? No, this EPA is in rural, what is it, North Carolina? Asheville, yeah, whatever it is, yeah. We've been there. We've been to visit them, talking to them about research. Eton and I've been there to visit them. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's part of that. That's part of the mentality with EPA. We want everybody to be clean like we are. Or then what you do is, I work with this wind-blown dust problem in the desert. Kern County, now they got the whole thing figured out. They have one monitor in that whole area. Same with, remember you guys used to have, the AQMD used to go up into Antelope Valley.
Yeah.
Then you got then
Claremont, Antelope, yeah.
Then they didn't like you guys. Too many rules and regulations. So they formed their own Antelope Valley AQMD, right? Okay. So where they put their one monitor in the telephone booth. Because there are a lot of telephone booths now that have nothing in them, right?
Yeah. Just
because paid telephones are a thing of the past.
Yeah.
So they put it in downtown. They put their one monitor in downtown Lancaster, where there's no way they can violate any of the PM standards. No way. Yet you go a few miles out and they have huge windstorms out there still, dust storms, where I can assure you, the whole spring, this is what we're working on, is dust mitigation measures out there. But they are very, so that's how they solve the problem. So EPA classifies them as unclassified. Not non-attainment, not attainment, but unclassified. Basically, that's a permanent designation for them. Same with Eastern Kern County. Eastern Kern County is separate from regular Kern County, unclassified. It's great. And Kern County, where we have huge dust problems. I'm talking about we have thousands of micrograms per cubic meter of PM during those dust storms, right? You can't even see past the hood of your car. No monitors there at all. Zero. One monitor in all the Antelope Valley, Lancaster. What? In the middle of a telephone booth.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
See, that's what I'm saying. Oh, but the most polluted place in the state is Trona. Trona. You ever been there?
No, I heard of it, but not. I mean,
Well, it's legendary. You go there in the winter, under a high pressure, like when we have our Santa Anas here, big dome of high pressure over them. They're in a locked-in valley. They're just south of Death Valley, where Death Valley, you climb over the road, you go down to Trona. That's a company town. They mine minerals there, all the salts from dry lake beds. 100 megawatt coal-fired power plant. All they got on that thing is some ESPs. That's all. That, nothing fancy. They bring in coal. Coal. That's the only coal-fired power plant in the state. Nobody knows about it, right? They are so polluted in the winter, you can barely see across the street. No problem. People like to work there. They got good jobs. They're making good money. Good jobs. No monitors. Leave them alone. That's all part of Eastern Kern County. So you see, that's how you solve your problem.
you change the monitor.
You just get rid of all the monitors, or you put them where there's no pollution, right?
Yeah. All right, so let me, because I have a car full to catch.
All
so
right.
good to talk to you, and
Okay, Sean.
thanks for coming. And
Yeah, you guys did a nice job this
I
afternoon.
hope so. Yeah, it's complicated.
Well, hey, if it were easy, we would have solved the problem a long time ago, right? The biggest problem is that we thought long ago that we would meet these standards, but they just keep getting more and more stringent.
Yeah.
It's a killer.
And also you have more people, more cars.
Well, yeah, that doesn't help. Right.
But
I
when you
mean,
look at the California economy, it looks like overall the economy is improving. Actually, we are right now the rate of recovery for California is ahead of the nation.
that's right. And I think
So
I
that's
think what San Bernardino needs to do, because we read about them, they're in trouble. They got a lot of gangs. They got real problems there. What they need to do is to attract people with pollution, attract technology like the rest of the state does, with pollution-free industries, right?
Yeah.
That's what they need to do. You don't put polluting industries in the middle of the LA basin anymore.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. And there are plenty of pollution-free industries that pay good jobs, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they need to attract.
Yeah, and also as you said, if they improve their education and the class, because Orange County Airline has attracting a lot of high-paying jobs.
Yeah.
But those guys, when they live in Mission Viejo, they're not going to live in San Bernardino.
No.
Because of all the gang problems,
That's right.
because of all the issue problems, traffic problems.
That's right.
So they need to improve that before they're attracting the.
Well, see, that's the problem. They have no money to improve all that, right? Because their economy is in wretched shape. So it's a vicious circle.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right.